The story begins on a dark, lonely night in a warehouse. A man angrily berates a young girl named Kitty for stealing food and orders her to be thrown out. Kitty tearfully pleads for forgiveness. She explains that her mother is starving. The man, Sir Jerian, agrees to spare her mother, but he coldly warns Kitty never to return. Two men drag Kitty away while a boy picks up her cat. Kitty begs them to be gentle with her mother, especially her belly, as she is pregnant. The boy mocks her, saying that her mother won't survive anyway. The scene shifts to a cliff edge. Kitty is pushed off the cliff, but she survives. Moments later, the boy cruelly throws her mother off the cliff as well. Kitty runs and catches her in midair, clinging tightly to her injured mother. Kitty cries and blames herself, but quickly remembers her unborn sibling. Blood flows from her mother, who says they had no choice. They had been starving for too long. Severely injured, Kitty's mother tells her she can't hold on any longer and urges her to flee to the wolf territory before the patrolling cats arrive. Kitty cries and begs her mother to stop talking, apologizing for not understanding sooner. Her mother takes Kitty's hand and tells her that she possesses a special power. A light enters Kitty's body, and her mother tells her she will discover her power one day. Then, her mother dies, leaving Kitty heartbroken. Kitty weeps, cat ears appearing on her head. She remembers all the wrongs, the conflict between the strong and the weak, the half-cats forced into hiding, and the sudden deaths of her father and brother. Kitty transforms into a cat, mourning sorrowfully, unsure where to go. She apologizes to her mother, buries her body, and sits by the grave, crying. She resolves to be strong and vows revenge for Jerian's actions. As Kitty prepares to leave, she tells herself she will be all right. Even as a cat, she is as brave as a wolf, and she asks her mother to rest in peace. Suddenly, it starts to rain. She pauses, worried about her mother's grave, and wonders where to go after leaving cat territory. While pondering, she sees a knight talking to two young boys, warning them not to wander too far. Kitty notices the boys have the same gray hair as her and realizes they might be half-wolves. She remembers her mother saying that young half-beasts look alike, distinguished mainly by fur color, with other traits yet to manifest. Kitty thinks she might be able to pass as a wolf. She recalls her mother mentioning the wealthy and generous Gritwolf family who rule the wolf territory. She knows that if discovered as a cat, she might be tortured or banished, but if she stays in cat territory, she might starve. Kitty believes half-beasts are rational creatures and won't harm her without reason, so she decides to take a chance. Gathering her courage, she follows the wolf children. She is determined to move forward. At the Gritwolf mansion, two young wolf brothers are bored, complaining that their ball has flown over the wall again. One jokes that if the other were a girl, he could dress her up. Just then, the butler knocks, informing them that someone is lurking nearby. Curious, the brothers look outside and discover Kitty. Kitty excitedly introduces herself, claiming to be a brave little wolf, and says she heard the Gritwolves help homeless, pitiful wolves by giving them work. However, one of the brothers sniffs the air and realizes Kitty is actually a cat. They whisper to each other, considering punishing her for lying by making her retrieve their ball, since cat fur is so soft. Despite this, they politely invite Kitty inside, concealing their thoughts. Kitty is overjoyed and gratefully accepts. Kitty marvels at the magnificent Gritwolf palace. She extends her hands to shake theirs, introducing herself. Her unusual gesture surprises the two brothers. They curiously shake her hands, finding them soft and delicate. They can't help but wonder if all cats are like this. Despite knowing she's a cat, the brothers act friendly, making Kitty wonder if she truly appears as a wolf to them. Walking into the mansion together, Kitty guesses they are about 10 to 12 years old. One of them shows her the main building of the Gritwolf estate, and Kitty is amazed. She notices many tall, confident servants who seem to fit the grand atmosphere of the mansion. Kitty feels inferior, comparing herself to them, feeling like her light, silent cat-like steps and appearance don't belong here. A boy notices Kitty is preoccupied and asks her about it. Kitty quickly denies it, trying to stay positive, remembering her mother's words. Even as a cat, she is as strong as a wolf. Suddenly, Kitty's stomach growls, and she feels embarrassed. Kitty confessed that she hadn't eaten in days, leaving the boys both surprised and concerned. Kitty tried to downplay it, saying she usually only ate once a day. One of the boys asked with concern why she ate so little and how she came to be at the Gritwolf mansion. Kitty Kitty's expression darkened, hinting at a painful past. The kind brothers then wrapped her in a blanket and settled her at the dining table, ready to take care of her. Full of sympathy, they apologized for asking too many questions and expressed their concern for her difficult past, acknowledging her young age. They remarked that she must have endured much hardship, having to survive on spring water at such a young age. They comforted her, urging her to relax, eat something, and rest, assuring her that she had nothing to worry about today. Out of curiosity, they asked for her full name, but Kitty hesitated. When one of the brothers added, asking what people usually called her, Kitty brightly replied with a nickname, Soft Paws, because of her soft palms. One brother chuckled, but the other scolded him for being impolite to a lady. The brothers were touched by her strength. Both brothers hugged her, expressing their sympathy for her having to work so hard at such a young age, instead of enjoying her childhood like other children. Nancio introduced himself and his younger brother, Dion, revealing that their father was Gritwolf. Kitty had been searching for him. She realized that the kind brothers she had encountered were actually Gritwolf's sons. She had assumed they were just kind strangers. Nancio noticed her surprise, and Dion jokingly remarked that since they were all wolves, Kitty shouldn't be too shocked. Kitty quickly tried to hide her surprise, but her paws involuntarily extended due to her nervousness. She panicked, wondering if they had noticed that she was actually a cat. However, the brothers didn't react to her paws and continued talking about how hungry they were, smoothly easing the awkwardness. Kitty quickly focused on hiding her paws, striving to keep her secret. The brothers enjoyed the moment, completely oblivious to her nervousness. After a while, the food was served, and Nancio warmly welcomed Kitty with a smile, explaining that the Wolf clan always prepared a feast for their guests, hoping they would stay longer. Kitty was thrilled to see the table laden with food and exclaimed, "Wow." Dion, noticing her excitement, asked what she wanted to eat first. Kitty pointed at the fish, and both Dion and Nancio began to tease her. Nancio joked that, as a kitten or a wolf cub, of course, she would choose the fish first. Kitty couldn't wait to dig in, praising the delicious food as she ate. Dion playfully asked if it was so good she wanted to eat it forever, and Nancio added that she must be enjoying herself. Kitty was overjoyed by the delicious meal, thinking that she had never tasted anything so good. It melted in her mouth, completely exceeding her past experiences. Immersed in the deliciousness, she momentarily forgot to control her reactions. In her excitement, her cat tail suddenly popped out. Kitty immediately panicked, worried that the brothers would notice. She thought that her tail, different from a wolf's, would easily expose her identity. She also recalled the painful memory of her tail being bitten, increasing her anxiety. Kitty desperately hoped they hadn't seen her tail, trying to hide it, feeling both shy and afraid of being talked about. Nancio and Dion whispered to each other, speculating whether everyone had already figured out that Kitty was actually a cat. They agreed that it was quite obvious from her scent, but no one dared to do anything to her because she was with them. They also discussed how to protect her within the mansion, especially since they had recently hired new staff. The new staff might cause trouble. While the brothers were whispering, Kitty eavesdropped with her sensitive cat ears. Nancio said there were no vacancies on the staff list, but hinted that perhaps they could arrange a position. Dion agreed that they needed to get her settled in quickly, which frightened Kitty, making her nervously wonder if the position they were talking about was somewhere dangerous, like the grill. Dion, noticing her reaction, quickly reassured her and encouraged her to continue eating. Meanwhile, the brothers continued to observe Kitty, noticing her chipped tooth, broken nails, and signs of malnutrition. They decided that to prevent her from being bullied in the wolf territory, they had to get their father, the leader of the pack, to officially recognize her as family. Dion confidently stated that their mother had already accepted Kitty, and their father would surely agree. Nancio added that their mother had even hidden some things away, implying that she was very much looking forward to having a daughter. This meant they all wanted Kitty to become a part of their family. The two brothers looked at Kitty, who started to feel uncomfortable and asked why they were staring at her. Nancio quickly explained that they were complimenting her wolf ears, and Dion added that ears perk up when eating delicious food. Kitty innocently replied that everyone does that, and after a brief pause, the brothers enthusiastically agreed. Kitty laughed excitedly and asked if that was really true. They both confirmed it. Nancio then shyly asked if he could touch her ears. Kitty pouted slightly and said that it was generally considered rude, but since they had been so kind to her, As Nuncio stroked her ears, Kitty acquiesced, making him incredibly happy. Dion, noticing his brother's expression, curiously asked him why he looked so pleased. Dion then reached out and touched Kitty's ears himself, experiencing the same surprise and delight. The two brothers excitedly called for a servant, asking when their father would return and instructing them to tell him that their mother also had urgent business, urging him to come home quickly. They muttered to each other that if they prepared the family register before their father's return, things would progress much faster. As they looked at Kitty, they were completely captivated by the soft fur on the tips of her ears, finding her utterly adorable. Kitty tried to hide the dirt on her body with her tattered clothes. She asked about Lord Gritwolf. Dion explained that their father, Jackal Gritwolf, was the strongest of the wolf clan, stern and dignified, but deeply caring towards his family. Even leopards feared him. Nuncio added that their mother, Karis Greywolf, the former captain of the Night Knights, had always wanted a daughter. Nuncio suggested that since Kitty had nowhere to go and was still young, she should become part of their family rather than a servant. He assured her that their mansion was the safest place in the wolf territory. Kitty felt a pang of sadness. She thought that if Jackal Gritwolf adopted her, she would be safe. But she also worried that if she accepted this new life, her past family, her parents, would be forgotten. Nuncio excitedly picked Kitty up, announcing that their father, Lord Gritwolf, had returned. Dion teased Kitty about being afraid of wolf howls. Kitty quickly defended herself, claiming she was also a wolf. When they met Jackal Gritwolf, Kitty was intimidated by his powerful and stern aura. Jackal asked, puzzled, who this small, fluffy creature was, leaving Kitty momentarily speechless, as she was currently in human form. Dion introduced her as Softpaws, saying she wanted to greet him. Nuncio put her down, and Kitty nervously greeted him. Jackal sniffed her and immediately realized she was actually a cat. Kitty, panicked but resolute, extended her hand, proclaiming herself to be the brave little wolf Kitty, pretending to be seeking work for orphaned wolves. Though trembling, Jackal firmly shook Kitty's hand, not revealing that he knew she was a cat. Seeing Jackal's grip was too tight, Dion quickly urged him to loosen it, lest he break Kitty's hand. Nuncio was also worried about Kitty's delicate frame. Although intimidated by Jackal's imposing presence, Kitty was surprised to think that he might actually like her. Jackal calmly stated that Kitty was too young and too thin to handle any work, but he was willing to arrange a comfortable and safe place for her within the territory, where she could live with the small animals, feeling she was more suited there. But Dion immediately objected, insisting that Kitty was a wolf and couldn't live with the small animals. He explained that although Kitty currently looked soft and cute, she would grow into a fierce wolf, which would be dangerous for the small animals. Jackal narrowed his eyes at Kitty, skeptical about whether she was truly a wolf. But Kitty met his gaze with newfound confidence, determined to maintain her new identity. Jackal said sarcastically, "Oh, so it really is a wolf. I see it clearly now," clearly not believing Kitty's claim. Despite this, Dion and Nuncio excitedly tried to persuade their father that if they registered this frail little wolf into the family, they could protect her. They also reminded their father that their mother had always wanted a daughter. But Jackal sternly corrected them, saying his wife didn't actually like little girls. He asked them where they had heard that. Dion insisted he had seen girls' things in his mother's wardrobe and offered to fetch them as proof. Kitty became nervous upon hearing this, thinking that Lady Gritwolf didn't actually like girls and worrying that Karis would dislike her upon seeing her and send her away, as the wolf clan usually listened to the mistress of the house. Just then, a woman suddenly pulled down Kitty's blanket from behind, startling her. It was Karis Gritwolf, Nuncio, and Dion's mother. Karis looked at Kitty and said, so there's a little girl in my mansion. Already nervous, Kitty became even more frightened and began to tremble. Nuncio and Dion comforted the nervous Kitty while introducing her to their mother. Dion told Karis that Kitty was a brave little wolf, and Nuncio explained that Kitty had come all this way after hearing that Karis would give work to orphan wolves. Kitty mustered her courage and extended her hand to Karis. Softly greeting her, Karis shook her hand, but Kitty worried that her soft hand would displease her and feared rejection. Fighting back tears, Kitty desperately tried to win Karis's favor, saying she could sing to lift her spirits, pick beautiful flowers for her on sunny days, and open the curtains for her to admire the scenery on moonlit nights, speaking these words with tears in her eyes. She even offered to sweep the chimneys, claiming she'd learned how before she could even talk. Crying, she pleaded for even the smallest chance to work in the mansion, promising not to cause any trouble. Then, wiping away her tears, she tried to compose herself. Karis comforted Kitty, telling her to dry her eyes. She also told her to take a good bath. The thought of bathing filled Kitty with shock and dismay. She hated water and disliked getting her fur wet. Just then, a maid named Lena Gray introduced herself and offered to help Kitty bathe. Kitty nervously introduced herself and explained why she had come. Lena, seeing how young Kitty was, expressed sympathy but reassured her that she had come to the right place. Lord Gritwolf was kind to all wolves, even old and weak ones like herself, she said. Kitty's heart filled with hope. Overjoyed by these words, Kitty beamed. Lena insisted on starting the bath and disinfecting Kitty's wounds, but Kitty tried to avoid it, saying she could wash herself. She quickly washed her face and hands in the water, but Lena firmly stated that this was not nearly enough and urged Kitty to come with her. Reluctantly, Kitty agreed, and Lena began to undress her. Lena noticed that the buttons on Kitty's dress were old and difficult to undo. Kitty was startled, but expressed her deep attachment to the dress. Lena reassured her, saying she could keep a button as a memento and would put it away safely after the bath. While combing Kitty's hair, Lena complimented its beauty. Kitty said the journey had been hard on it, but if she had a job like Lena's, she would take better care of it. Lena suggested styling it in pigtails, saying it would look cuter, and asked where Kitty's luggage was. Kitty confessed that the clothes she was wearing were all she owned. Lena mentioned that the young masters had already arranged a room for Kitty and that the large wardrobe was now hers. She added that it was the first time they had genuinely made a request for a guest. Kitty was surprised. Lena picked Kitty up and carried her towards the bathtub, remarking on how light she was, surely because she was so small. Kitty nervously agreed. Once in the water, Kitty shivered and noticed a crack on her paw, which made her uncomfortable. Lena noticed a strange smell on Kitty. Embarrassed, Kitty admitted she hadn't bathed in a long time, hence the odor. Kitty began scrubbing herself, wanting to get clean. As she scrubbed, she spotted a rubber ducky and became instantly excited, delighted by its presence. Lena continued to bathe her. After the bath, Lena helped her into clean clothes. Kitty gratefully remarked on how comfortable they were. Lena, however, commented that there was still a slightly strange smell, making Kitty nervous that her secret might be discovered. However, Lena suddenly complimented her eyes, saying they were incredibly beautiful, an emerald green she had never seen on a wolf before. Kitty, slightly embarrassed by the praise, nervously explained that she came from a faraway place and thanked Lena for the compliment. She thought of the beauty of her eyes, like the tranquility of a lakeside picnic, the color a blend of green grass and clear lake water. Seeing how much better Kitty's hair looked after the bath, Lena offered to brush it. Kitty felt relieved and grateful. As Lena brushed, she noticed how thick and curly Kitty's hair was, speculating that she might have lived somewhere cold, as animals with thick fur usually came from such regions. Kitty confirmed this, saying she used to live in a drafty, leaky place where she had to wear 2 layers to sleep, but she cherished that time because she had her mother. Lena asked if it was somewhere in the north. Kitty said she wasn't sure, only remembering that they were always short of firewood. After brushing her hair, Lena complimented Kitty on how refreshed she looked, saying the young masters would surely be pleased. Kitty thanked Lena for her help. Lena encouraged her, saying that as a brave little wolf, she was sure to find good work, and told Kitty to rest while the servants cleaned the bathroom. After Lena left, Kitty looked at herself in the mirror, feeling excited but quickly becoming anxious. She noticed her fur wasn't the color of a wolf's. She realized her fur, originally dark gray, was probably just covered in dust from not being washed in so long. Kitty worried about what to do. Seeing a towel, she decided to cover her hair with it, wondering if it would arouse suspicion. She pulled her cat ears out from under the towel, relieved, as Nancio and Dion had both complimented her wolf ears. Kitty picked up the button from her old shirt and walked over to the bed, hiding it under her pillow. Since this was her room now, she figured it wouldn't be found. Lying on the soft bed, Kitty wished she could stay here for a week. She felt that Nancio and Dion seemed to like her, but she wasn't so sure about Lord Gritwolf and his wife, as they didn't seem to like her very much. Worried she'd be thrown out soon as the mansion's owners returned, Kitty decided to wait for them. Resting, she wondered about her siblings, whether they were boys or girls, and recalled her mother's curiosity about their future fur color. Kitty decided to rest a while longer before trying to plead her case with Gritwolf and Gritwolf. Karis looked at Theo and Dion, demanding an explanation. "Tell me," she said, "what is the meaning of this?" Theo and Dion excitedly introduced Kitty to Karis, explaining that her name was Kitty, nicknamed Soft Paws due to her incredibly soft paws. They added that having such a cute, gentle, and soft-pawed little sister would surely bring more harmony to the mansion. Jackal sternly interrupted them. Theo explained that Kitty had come because she heard Gritwolf offered work to wolves without families. Dion added that she wouldn't be able to start working for quite some time. Karis scolded Theo and Dion, asking if they had irresponsibly suggested taking Kitty into the wolf family. She reminded them of past events, asking if they remembered what happened 12 years ago when the power of the blue moon drove the beastmen to madness and back to their primal forms. She explained that the blue moon, a gem from the origin myths, appeared in the leopard territory. When it was discovered, the leopards flocked to it, believing it to be a relic of the goddess. However, it brought disaster, as the blue moon contained immense primal magic. The leopards who came into contact with its power lost their minds and reverted to their feral states. Karis explained the inherent danger. She reminded Theo and Dion that after numerous experiments, it was discovered that the leopards possessing the blue moon attempted to drive other animals into the same frenzy. She warned that if the larger animals in the mansion were to go mad again, no one could guarantee Kitty's safety. How safe could a cat truly be among wolves? She questioned. Could they truly guarantee her safety? Theo tried to defend Kitty, saying their father had called her a wolf. Theo and Dion attempted to persuade Karis, arguing that Kitty had no parents to protect or provide for her, so whether it was in a den of potentially crazed wolves or the harsh outside world, the danger was the same. Karis silently dismissed them. In a flashback, she recalled her own painful past. In her wolf form, she wept as she buried her deceased wolf pup, promising to return no matter how cold or afraid she became. Back in the present, still in her wolf form, Karis watched Kitty, now back in her cat form, sleeping peacefully. Jackal explained that Kitty had apparently fallen asleep in the hallway while waiting for them, so he brought her inside. Karis looked somewhat moved and told Jackal she had something to say. She gently patted the sleeping Kitty, her heart seemingly softening. Karis confessed to Jackal that she had lied earlier. She hadn't thrown away their deceased daughter's belongings. In fact, she had continued to buy things a little girl might need, even though seeing a real little girl brought back the painful memories of their loss. She admitted that raising Kitty would be difficult, as it would constantly evoke those memories. Kitty mumbled in her sleep about her tail not being tasty. Karis smiled, pulled her close, and thought to herself that it must be difficult for Kitty to pretend her cattail was a wolf's. Jackal suggested that since the outside world was too dangerous for Kitty, they should protect her until she could take care of herself. Karis agreed, saying they would be her family for the time being. She admitted to feeling both happy and afraid at the prospect of having Kitty with them. Ultimately, both Karis and Jackal were happy to welcome Kitty into their lives. The next morning, Kitty woke up feeling warm and comfortable, still in her cat form, and stretched. Karis greeted her with a gentle smile, remarking that she looked happy. Kitty was startled at the sight of Karis, realizing she was no longer disguised as a wolf. Panic set in, and she stammered, trying to find an excuse. Kitty thought it was dangerous to be seen in this form, and was about to explain when Karis chuckled softly, saying it had been a while since she'd seen such a small wolf pup. Theo and Dion had certainly grown quite a bit. Relieved that Karis still perceived her as a wolf, Kitty recalled Karis's frown from the previous day. She wondered if she had been too energetic, not acting like a girl her apparent age. Determined not to lose her place in the mansion, she resolved to continue pretending to be a mature and dependable wolf. Kitty believed that if she ever wanted to get revenge on Jerry, she had to hide her true self and live independently until the time was right. Noticing Kitty's ruffled fur from sleep, Karis gently offered to smooth it down. Kitty, striving to remain composed and polite, softly replied, "Thank you." Later, Karis sat in a chair, and Kitty, still in her cat form, happily settled onto Karis's lap, enjoying being petted. Karis gently asked if she was comfortable, and Kitty giggled, requesting more petting, but quickly reminded herself not to get too carried away. Like a child, Karis then mentioned she now understood why Dion called her soft paws. Her little pink paws were adorable and soft. Kitty was a little surprised, thinking Karis might dislike her for it, but Karis gently explained that Kitty's delicate hands made her heart ache, as it indicated she was malnourished. She promised to feed Kitty lots of delicious food and make her stronger. Kitty was touched, wondering if from now on meant something permanent. Karis invited her to join everyone for dinner, saying they were all waiting for her, full of anticipation and happiness. Kitty hopped down from her lap and said, "Okay." She burrowed into the blanket and told Karis her name was Kitty. Karis asked if her nickname was Tia. Just then, Kitty emerged from the blanket in her human form, a bright smile on her face, saying she'd be happy if Karis called her Kitty. Karis picked her up and carried her to the dining room. As they walked, Kitty wondered if from now on meant she'd been assigned work, or if, as Theo and Dion had said, they truly wanted to adopt her. But she also worried that one day they would discover she was actually a cat, not a wolf, and she would have to leave the mansion. When Karis and Kitty arrived at the dining room, Theo and Dion greeted her excitedly, relieved to see her safe and sound. Theo rushed over, confessing he thought she might have run away. Dion pulled out a chair for her, and Kitty sat down. Theo, a little embarrassed, said he was worried another wolf might have hurt her, but he was glad she was all right. Kitty apologized for making them worry, saying she had slept well. Dion added that they had been too worried about her to sleep, and their mother, Karis, had been so upset that their father had made them run 20 laps around the training grounds. Karis brought a warm bowl of creamy mushroom soup topped with crispy grilled salmon. She reminded Kitty to eat slowly because the soup was hot. Dion was surprised Karis called her Kitty. Karis calmly replied that she had received Kitty's permission to use the nickname, playfully reminding Dion not to use a lady's nickname without permission. Theo asked if they could also call her Kitty, and she happily agreed, saying they were all very kind. Jackal stared silently at Kitty, making her nervous. Karis gently scolded him, telling him not to interrogate her with his eyes and to ask nicely like the children, as he was scaring Kitty. After dinner, Theo and Dion happily brought Kitty dessert, saying they thought she would like pudding, so they had prepared it especially for her. Kitty noticed her pudding seemed particularly large and wondered if it was originally meant for Mr. Jackal. But Jackal assured her it was hers. Theo encouraged her to enjoy it. Karis asked Kitty how she liked the meal, and Kitty happily replied that it was delicious and sincerely thanked her. Karis smiled and told her that all the food in the Gritwolf mansion was made there, and if she was ever hungry, she could always ask for something to eat. Kitty thought about how Jirian used to control the cats with food, but Karis genuinely offered her free access to the kitchen, which thrilled her. She hoped they truly believed she was a wolf. Karis then gently told Kitty that all the Gritwolves wanted her to become an honorary family member, so she could live safely with them until she grew up. She asked Kitty how she truly felt. Kitty looked at Jackal, wondering if, despite their serious expressions, they really wanted her to be part of their family. The pain caused by Jerry and the memories of losing her mother flashed through her mind. Kitty sadly replied that while she would be happy to be cared for by the Gritwolf family, she couldn't promise she would forget her original family. She worried that would disappoint them, and she didn't want to do that. Karis gently comforted Kitty, saying that once you become family, you never truly forget. She reassured Kitty that she didn't have to force herself to forget her past. Family always stays in your heart. Karis's words deeply moved Kitty, and she couldn't help but cry, asking excitedly if she could really have two families before she grew up. The Gritwolf family gathered around to comfort her. Dion handed her a handkerchief, teasing her for being a crybaby. Karis gently affirmed that Kitty's birth family would surely want her to be safe and happy. Dion wiped away Kitty's tears and excitedly asked if this meant she would become his little sister. Theo, however, thought with a touch of sadness that even a life of plenty could be lonely, remembering Kitty had said she buried her mother with her own hands. Hearing this, Karis looked at Jackal with a heavy heart. Karis comforted Kitty, saying that after an animal funeral, they go to a happy place. Kitty sadly said she didn't have any money and couldn't give her mother a proper funeral. Karis reassured her that even though it was late, she would help Kitty hold a formal funeral. Kitty then asked what this happy place actually was. Karis explained that it was a warm and comfortable paradise. Theo added that paradise was like a wonderland where you could have everything you wanted, so Kitty's family must be very happy there. Dion agreed, telling Kitty not to blame herself. Kitty's mood gradually improved as she began to imagine paradise as a tranquil place, wondering if perfectly sliced salmon floated in the streams. She asked Jackal, "Does paradise really have everything?" Jackal, slightly perplexed by the salmon question, agreed that paradise must be such a haven. Kitty's cat ears popped out in happiness, expressing her gratitude for the Gritwolf family's kindness. Dion and Theo enthusiastically hugged her, calling her little sister. Theo declared happily that as long as his little sister was happy, he would be too. Kitty then proposed holding funerals not only for her mother, but also for her father and brother, who had died years ago during a mission in the Northern Bear Territory. Jackal, shocked, asked for confirmation. Kitty replied, "Yes, both my father and brother were named Icarus. They both perished during that mission." Jackal's gaze sharpened, making Kitty nervous. Unable to meet his eyes, she lowered her head and let her thoughts wander. She worried that others would gossip about her mother not looking like a wolf. She also remembered that her mother was buried in the cat territory. Because of her banishment, returning to exhume her mother's remains for a funeral would be nearly impossible. Kitty imagined her mother safe and sound in paradise, perhaps catching salmon in the streams with her unborn kittens, and decided not to disturb her rest. Karis comforted Kitty, saying, "A true funeral doesn't require a body. The most important things are flowers, candles, and heartfelt blessings, wishing the deceased happiness." Karis added, "If there's a family photo, the ceremony will be even more meaningful." Kitty's eyes lit up. She thought the idea was wonderful. Theo excitedly suggested going to his room to draw, as he had many art supplies, including a box of 200 crayons. Kitty held Theo and Dion's hands as they walked. Theo said they would prepare candles and flowers and finish the drawing before sunset. Kitty politely thanked him. Reaching the door to the room, Kitty looked apprehensive at the wolf-shaped handle, but insisted it was only because her hands were full, not because she was scared. Dion teased her, offering to open the door for her, but stating that next time she would have to do it herself. Both brothers found her reaction amusing. After Dion opened the door, he dismissed the maids. Theo told Kitty he would slowly introduce everyone in the house to her, once their names were recorded in the family tree. Kitty agreed. Dion then gently lifted Kitty onto a cushion, joking that she was so light he'd have to prepare more snacks for her. Kitty said double snacks might be too much, but Dion insisted, adding that if she ever wanted something to eat, she could come to his room anytime, and he would have grilled salmon ready for her. Kitty laughed happily and thanked him. When Kitty addressed Dion as Mr., he looked displeased and told her there was no rush. She could take her time, and he would wait for her to call him brother. Kitty was surprised by this term of address. While Dion was distracted, Theo teased him about monopolizing Kitty. Then he handed Kitty crayons and paper, asking her to draw a family portrait that would fit in a frame. Kitty thanked him and began to draw earnestly. Theo and Dion watched, amused by her adorable manner. They saw Kitty's tail swaying with her pencil as she drew and couldn't help but laugh. Kitty, a little embarrassed, said even wolf cubs make mistakes. Theo and Dion quickly apologized, promising not to tease her again, and affectionately called her soft paws. A maid brought snacks, saying Mr. Karis had sent them. Dion told Kitty the snacks had arrived and asked if she wanted any. Focused on her drawing, Kitty agreed to just one. While Kitty drew, Dion asked about her family. Kitty said her mother was warm and always held her close, giving her the nickname Soft Paws. Dion praised her mother. Kitty excitedly said her father and brother were heroes, constantly away on missions, but always brought back gifts. Dion replied that they would strive to do the same. Kitty added that her mother had 3 unborn kittens in her belly, so she couldn't draw them yet. Noticing it wasn't sunset yet, Kitty asked if she could draw another picture on the back of the paper, promising to be quick. Dion agreed, but reminded her to be careful not to ruin the front. Kitty sprawled her whole body over the paper as she drew. Dion and Theo whispered that she looked like a loaf of bread. Kitty thought to herself that she wanted to draw her whole family as cats. After finishing, Kitty excitedly hugged and kissed the drawing, telling her family in her heart not to worry, that she would become the happiest, and that she hoped they were happy in paradise. Suddenly, she noticed the sun was about to set and became nervous about being late. Theo told her to give him the drawing so he could quickly put it in a frame. Just then, Karis entered and asked if the drawing was finished. Kitty excitedly showed him the drawing, and Karis praised her work. Kitty asked if it was enough for the funeral, and Karis reassured her that it was. Then, Karis, Kitty, Theo, and Dion prepared to leave. Dion said he and Theo had some things to do and would be there soon. Karis reminded them not to be late. Holding Karis's hand, Kitty asked where they were going. Karis replied that they were going to her room. Upon arriving, Kitty noticed the wolf-shaped doorknob and felt a little nervous, realizing this wasn't her old room. Jackal was already waiting inside. Surprised, Kitty asked where she was. Jackal told her it was her room. Although it looked the same, she realized this room was now in the Gritwolf family mansion. She understood the special wolf doorknob symbolized acceptance into the family. Kitty smiled, touched, and gently thanked them, noticing even the pillows had been thoughtfully prepared. Karis told Kitty they would light the candles when Theo and Dion arrived. When the candles burned down, it would symbolize everyone going to a happy place in paradise. So Kitty should be prepared. Theo and Dion then rushed in, apologizing for being late and saying they were preparing a gift for Kitty. They handed the flowers and candles to Kitty. Touched and excited, Kitty asked if these gifts were for her unborn siblings. Theo and Dion proudly said they couldn't ignore Kitty's care for her siblings. Kitty wiped away her tears and, smiling, agreed to begin. She placed her family portrait on the table, lit the candles, decorated with flowers, and began the heartfelt funeral. She prayed for her family's happiness in paradise, promised to see them again, and expressed her deep love. After the funeral, everyone relaxed on the sofa. Kitty thanked Mr. Gritwolf for arranging everything. Theo comforted her, saying they would stay with her until the candles burned out completely. Worried it would take a long time, Kitty asked if they would get sleepy. Theo told her that, as family, they would wait together. Touched, Kitty thanked them and called them her brothers. Dion, surprised and moved, said it was unfair how suddenly cute she had become. Kitty laughed happily. Kitty then narrated how they scraped the melted candle wax, put it in a small jar, and buried it in the villa's back garden. Mr. Jackal placed a magical pendulum where the candles had been, saying it would forever guard the chrysanthemums and the drawing in the display case. Though outwardly cold, he was actually very kind. With the support of her new family, Kitty completed the funeral. Theo and Dion then took Kitty on a tour of the mansion. They showed her their father's office, explaining the layout. One door led to the library, another to the Hall of Honor, and another to the meeting room. They explained their father was in charge of military affairs, and their mother, whose office was on the other side, handled political matters. Kitty was amazed by the place and loved the soft cushions. She noticed a portrait on the desk and asked if Mr. Jackal had brought it. Theo nodded, saying male wolves took pride in loving their families deeply. Dion added that although their father seemed strict, he was a great wolf. Kitty softly said they were wonderful brothers too. Surprised and delighted, Theo and Dion asked if she really thought so. Kitty happily confirmed, saying they were very, very wonderful. Karis brought out the family tree for Kitty to see. She explained that names could only be magically inscribed on the family tree with the consent of the Gritwolf patriarch. Kitty wrote her name, wondering if there were other names besides Theo and Dion's. Karis complimented her handwriting and then prepared the adoption paperwork, asking Kitty to read through all the documents carefully. Kitty excitedly agreed and began reading, eager to see her name in the documents. But she quickly became nervous, realizing she didn't recognize a single word besides her own name, thinking she was in trouble. Noticing Kitty's struggle, Karis gently smiled, took the documents back, and reassured Kitty that it was normal for little wolf pups not to understand such complex words. Jackal also supported her, saying that even Theo and Dion couldn't understand these documents at first, and promised to arrange a tutor for Kitty, soon to teach her everything she needed to learn. Karis offered to read the documents aloud to help Kitty understand. Kitty gradually understood, confirming her thoughts. Karis explained that the document was a formal agreement stating Kitty would be a member of the Gritwolf family until adulthood. If there was anything she didn't understand or wanted to change, they could discuss it together. Kitty hesitated, then made a small request. She found the wolf-shaped doorknob on her new room a little scary and asked if the teeth could be made smaller. Jackal calmly agreed to make the wolf's teeth rounder. Kitty thanked him with a happy smile, saying she had no other requests, as she was already happy to have a new home. Dion asked if she wanted to sign the adoption papers with a pen or her fingerprint. Kitty chose her fingerprint, saying she would design a cool signature when she grew up. Suddenly, Kitty transformed back into her cat form. Karis gently picked up Kitty, helping her make a nice paw print. Kitty excitedly agreed, even adorably asking if she should include her claws. Karis thought she was absolutely precious. Finally, Kitty pressed her tiny paw onto the document, a moment filled with love and joy. Kitty felt both thrilled and proud, now officially a member of the Gritwolf family until she reached adulthood. Karis gently told her it was time to introduce the household staff. While the schedule might be a bit tight, she assured Kitty it was all to help her settle in. Kitty had no objections, but curiously asked where Karis and the others were going. Karis explained that she needed to return to a meeting that wasn't yet over, a 10-day Wolf Clan assembly. She had only returned home because of the urgent summons regarding Kitty and the others. While delighted to welcome her new daughter, Karis reminded Kitty that, as a leader, she had a responsibility to attend this important meeting. Kitty innocently misunderstood, thinking Karis was going fishing, which made both Theo and Dion chuckle at her naivete. Karis smiled reassuringly, telling Kitty she'd be back after the meeting with a wonderful gift. She also explained that she was leaving early the next morning, so Kitty shouldn't be surprised if she didn't see her when she woke up. Before leaving, Karis promised to find Kitty a suitable tutor. She mentioned that she already had someone in mind during the meeting. Jackal repeated, somewhat surprised, during the meeting. Karis confirmed with a confident smile. Afterward, Karis introduced Kitty to the household servants. Kitty was astonished to see so many wolves, momentarily forgetting she was also a wolf. Karis reassured her that they wouldn't scare her, as they were all looking at her with friendly eyes. Karis explained that with this document, Kitty was officially a member of the Gritwolf family, and the staff would assist her. She encouraged Kitty to ask them for anything she needed. The staff members introduced themselves to Kitty. The head maid, Flora, greeted Kitty and told her there was no need for formalities, as she was now family. Kitty happily agreed to treat her as an equal. Karis then introduced the butler, Paul Clinton, an excellent employee responsible for managing the mansion. He respectfully greeted Kitty. Finally, the head chef, Mina, introduced herself, playfully inviting Kitty to come eat anytime, saying she looked too. Next, the gardener gave Kitty a flower as a gift, inviting her to visit the garden often. Kitty then met the night captain, Elliot, also Mr. Jackal's assistant. He introduced himself and allowed Kitty to call him Mr. Elliot. She cheerfully returned his greeting. While talking to Elliot, Kitty noticed a fox boy. She was the real wolf. Kitty was shocked and nervous, recalling her mother's warning that foxes were more sensitive and sharp-eyed than other races. Kitty realized her cat ears were exposed, worried that Clyde, the heir to the fox family, had discovered her secret, and feared she would be expelled for deceiving the Wolf Clan. She nervously grabbed Clyde's hand and bit his finger, trying to get away. Clyde reacted angrily, but Elliot scolded him for being disrespectful to Kitty. Jackal arrived, saw Clyde's anger, and called his name. Clyde apologized, but Kitty calmly told him not to do it again. Dion angrily argued with Clyde, but Clyde ignored him. Theo noticed Kitty's fear and asked if she was scared. Slightly flustered, she said she was just startled and that she was fine. Kitty was relieved that no one seemed to have noticed she was a cat. She asked why the heir to the Fox family was living in the Wolf Clan's home. Theo explained that due to a conflict with the Leopard Clan, the foxes were temporarily staying there. Foxes were more sensitive to magic, so they could be of assistance, although wolves and foxes weren't as close as bears and wolves. Kitty pondered the Fox family seeking help from the wolves, realizing they must be having difficulties, and decided to ask her tutor about it when she had the chance. Later, Karis introduced Rena to Kitty as her new caregiver. Rena, thrilled and honored, greeted Kitty and promised to always be by her side. Kitty excitedly asked if Rena would be with her every day. Rena confirmed, telling her to just call her by her name. Kitty happily expressed her joy at having Rena's companionship. Karis was pleased to see Kitty liked Rena. Rena told Kitty it was time for bed. Kitty thanked everyone for the introductions. She warmly bid Theo, Dion, Karis, and Jackal good night. Rena led Kitty to her new room. Kitty felt reassured when she saw the wolf-shaped doorknob, thinking it looked soft and wouldn't hurt even if she bit it. They entered the room together. Kitty excitedly ran to the bed, happily wishing Rena good night. But before she could jump on a bed, Rena scooped her up, preventing her. Kitty hesitantly asked if she absolutely had to take a bath, hoping to escape the ordeal. Rena gently but firmly told her that she must bathe before bed. Kitty felt a little unhappy, thinking about how much she hated baths. The hot water made her fur stiff and uncomfortable. She tried to avoid it, pleading with Rena to let her sleep first and bathe in the morning, but Rena refused. Despite Kitty's reluctance and resistance, Rena began undressing her for the bath. Rena explained that someone would be coming to make Kitty clothes tomorrow, and she had to be clean to meet them. She also mentioned picking out hair accessories and trimming Kitty's fur. But because time was limited, all of this would be done in the morning. Rena gently picked Kitty up and carried her towards the bathtub. Kitty gasped in amazement when she saw the beautiful bubbles. She squealed excitedly. Rena told her that from now on, she would bathe with bubbles, and that the masters had even prepared special bubble bath just for her. Kitty stepped into the tub with wonder as Rena began to bathe her. Kitty wondered why the bathroom smelled so good. Although a little shy, she silently hoped Rena would finish quickly. After her bath, Kitty lay in bed, ready for sleep. Rena told her it was time to sleep and that she needed to rest well to grow up healthy. Kitty, full of curiosity, couldn't help but ask a question. She wanted to know why the heir to the Fox family was living in the Gritwolf mansion. Rena gently refused to answer, saying Kitty was too young and that a teacher would come to teach her soon. Kitty, eager for even a small hint, tried to coax Rena, but Rena firmly stated she had no right to discuss the matter. Kitty thought Rena was very tight-lipped, refusing to say anything. Rena offered to sing Kitty a lullaby instead of answering her question. Kitty happily agreed, saying she loved lullabies. Rena then began to sing a gentle song. The lyrics told of a long-haired goddess with a bow and arrow, and a cat in a mirror pulling a cart under a blue sky. Meanwhile, Clyde stared absently at the finger Kitty had bitten. A guard noticed him and asked why he wasn't asleep yet. The guard reminded Clyde that only when he became strong enough could they be independent. Clyde nodded in agreement, but asked the guard not to mention it again, expressing his frustration at his slow progress. The guard silently apologized. Clyde recalled how heavy the responsibility on his shoulders had been since the Fox clan was scattered. He understood that only when his magic was strong enough and he was an adult could he revive his family. But until then, many would continue to suffer. Temporarily residing with the wolves made him uncomfortable, while the leopard clan threatened to use the Blue Moon's magic to rule the beast world. Although the Fox clan was the weakest physically, they were the strongest magically, making them highly valuable. Jackal believed that as long as the Blue Moon issue was resolved, the Fox clan could rise again. But Clyde knew in his heart that they would only act when it was profitable for them. He also found it amusing that everyone treated Kitty like a cat, especially a cat unafraid of foxes. Clyde chuckled to himself when he thought of Kitty, calling her that cat. The guard mentioned she was the youngest daughter adopted by the Gritwolf family. Clyde wondered why Jackal would adopt her, as he wasn't one to burden himself with extra trouble. The guard guessed it might be because Kitty was cute, especially since the Gritwolf family only had sons. He added that perhaps it was because Kitty herself had asked to be adopted, and they took pity on her. But Clyde didn't believe it, thinking Jackal Gritwolf wouldn't adopt someone out of pity. Perhaps Kitty wasn't an ordinary cat, and there was some connection between her and the Blue Moon. The next morning, Kitty woke up, yawning and stretching. Rena knocked and entered with other maids. She said that although Kitty was a wolf cub, she didn't seem to need much sleep. Kitty proudly declared that wolf cubs actually slept a lot, but she was almost an adult, just waiting for the tooth fairy, and then she would be fully grown. Rena told her that the masters were still asleep, and breakfast would be brought to her room soon. Kitty invited Rena to join her for breakfast, but Rena declined, saying she had already eaten and couldn't eat Kitty's food. Kitty was stunned by the lavish breakfast before her. Thick-cut bacon, air-dried salmon, vanilla muffins, warm milk tarts, pies, and beautiful desserts. She was surprised she was expected to eat it all. Rena encouraged her to eat more, especially the meat and milk. If she felt too full, she could leave some. Kitty recalled her difficult life in Jerry Ant's territory, where cats didn't eat if they didn't work. She'd had to wake up early to work since she was 3, with no days off and no pay, although her tasks were lighter than the other kittens. In her memory, Jerry and had Kitty touch a gemstone, asking if she felt anything special. Kitty felt nothing, and Jerry and was once again disappointed. Back in the present, Kitty ate her breakfast resolutely, determined to become strong and avenge her mother, who had suffered at the hands of the evil cat clan's enemies. After breakfast, Rena told Kitty it was time to trim her damaged hair. Kitty nervously asked how much would be cut off if all the damaged parts were removed. Rena joked that if they cut it all off, Kitty would be bald. Kitty imagined herself bald and was instantly frightened. Rena reassured her, saying they would only trim it a little and tie it up, and the rest could be trimmed later when it grew longer. She added that short hair didn't suit Kitty's thick hair. Kitty, relieved, agreed. Kitty mentioned that when she had short hair before, it would puff up like a mushroom every morning and look ridiculous. After Rena finished trimming her hair, Kitty looked at her newly trimmed hair and thanked Rena happily, saying it felt much lighter. Rena told her she would style it nicely and suggested that Kitty go out and play for a while before choosing clothes, as wolf pups needed to run and jump to exercise their muscles. Kitty wondered what she liked to do as a child, then admitted she enjoyed sitting on the wall and basking in the sun. Rena agreed that sunbathing was good for the body, but asked what else she liked. Kitty said that was all she liked because running and jumping made her hungry, and she didn't like that feeling. Rena encouraged her, saying there was always enough food in the Gritwolf house, so she could run as much as she wanted and go to the kitchen to eat when she was hungry, and then play again after eating. Kitty excitedly agreed. Rena helped Kitty get dressed, saying, "Miss, you look so lovely. Although this dress is temporary and you might not like it very much, a designer will come this afternoon to take your measurements for custom-made clothes. You can choose many beautiful clothes then." Kitty replied that she thought this dress was beautiful and asked if she could buy a few more. Rena reassured her, saying Mrs. Karras had allocated a huge budget for Kitty, and the total cost of her purchases would equal the combined clothing expenses of Theo and Dion. Kitty felt a little embarrassed, thinking that they were spending so much money even though she was only temporarily adopted. Rena told Kitty that she was truly adorable and everyone would like her, not just the Gritwolfs. Kitty nervously asked if Karras would like her. Rena suggested they go and show Mrs. Karras directly, but explained that Karras was still getting ready and might be leaving early in the morning as it was still too early for the wolf pups. Kitty eagerly asked where Karras was. Outside the mansion, Karras was ready to depart and was meeting with Theo, Dion, and Jackal. Karras reminded the two brothers to take good care of Kitty and not cause any trouble. Kitty ran towards them. When Karras saw Kitty in her new dress, everyone was amazed. Karras bent down and hugged Kitty, asking if she had gotten up early because of her. Kitty replied that she wasn't used to sleeping in. She just wanted to see Karras. She hugged Karras, and Karras was also very happy, thanking Kitty for coming to see her. Kitty said, "Mom, be careful." Karras told Jackal to take good care of their daughter, and Jackal agreed. Before leaving, Karras kissed Jackal. Kitty watched them, feeling a little lost. Kitty walked over to Jackal and innocently asked, "Isn't this where you're supposed to kiss goodbye?" Everyone, including Karras, Jackal, Theo, and Dion, was both puzzled and touched by Kitty's innocence. Karras lovingly kissed Kitty again and said, "If you were a little older, I would definitely take you with me, even if I had to put you in my pocket." Karras left in the carriage, and everyone waved goodbye. Suddenly, someone asked Jackal where the fake blue moon gem should be placed. Jackal replied that it should be placed in his office, and he would go get it later. Kitty overheard and, thinking of Jerian, wondered if the blue moon gem was related to him. Kitty recalled her past with Jerian, and Jackal glanced at her. Kitty became nervous under his gaze and asked, "Do you have something to say to me?" Jackal then asked about the plans for the day. Kitty was relieved, thinking, "So he cares about me. He looks like a bad guy, but he's actually a good person." Kitty was excited about the day's schedule, planning to have snacks after breakfast, play for a while, try on new dresses, play some more, have dinner, enjoy dessert, and finally take a bubble bath before bed. She asked Jackal if he wanted to join her, but Jackal said he was busy, which made Kitty a little disappointed. Theo said Kitty would be scared if Jackal said that. Jackal asked if that was true, and Dion comforted Kitty, saying Jackal was actually a gentle and kind wolf, and if Kitty didn't understand anything, Dion would explain it again. Kitty nervously asked if Jackal was very busy, and Jackal confirmed that he would be in his office all day. Kitty wondered what the difference was between busy and free, and Theo explained that it meant Kitty could go and play with him anytime. Kitty was happy to hear that, and said she definitely would. Rena asked Kitty if she wanted snack. Kitty said she was full and wanted to go for a walk. Theo and Dion offered to show her around the mansion, but Kitty said they had to change their clothes first. Theo and Dion were confused. After having snacks, Kitty played with Theo and Dion again. Rena reminded Kitty to be careful and said they would try on clothes after lunch. Kitty excitedly agreed. Dion took Kitty on a tour of the buildings attached to the mansion. They first visited the banquet hall, where everyone dined when they came to the Gritwolf mansion. Kitty was awestruck by the grandeur of the hall. Next, they went to the ballroom, which had a dance floor. Dion mentioned dancing with Kitty there later, but Theo argued that, as the older brother, he should dance with her first, even though he was a terrible dancer. The two brothers bickered back and forth until Kitty had to intervene and asked them to stop arguing. They continued their tour, heading outdoors. Kitty was amazed by the mansion's garden, thinking it almost covered the entire Cat clan's territory. Dion suggested they visit the nearby East Garden, and Kitty readily agreed. As they strolled through the garden, Theo pointed out roses, sunflowers, and a huge orchard, explaining that it was a favorite spot for the Gritwolf family's chefs and pastry chefs. Kitty was especially excited when she saw the strawberry plants. Dion invited her to try one, and Kitty eagerly tasted a strawberry, finding it delicious. She asked if she could have more, and Dion reassured her that it was fine as long as Philip, the gardener, didn't catch them. However, just as they were enjoying themselves, Philip, the gardener, appeared, politely greeting them. He asked Kitty if she had eaten any strawberries, and Kitty nervously tried to deny it. Both Dion and Kitty felt uneasy, realizing they might be in trouble for stealing fruit. Philip expressed some disappointment, saying he felt the strawberries weren't quite good enough yet. Kitty panicked and quickly explained that the strawberries were actually delicious, both sweet and tart. However, Philip immediately caught on and asked her if she had eaten any. Kitty realized she had let it slip and became even more nervous. Unexpectedly, Philip handed her a whole bucket of strawberries and told her that at the Gritwolf mansion, she could eat whatever she wanted. Kitty was overjoyed and quickly thanked him. Philip smiled and encouraged her to visit often. They continued their tour while eating strawberries. Kitty sighed, saying it must be nice to be a gardener and wishing she could have such a wonderful job at the mansion. Dion joked that if she walked around with a feather duster, the staff would surely be distracted by her cuteness. Kitty pouted, saying that being cute wasn't her job. Dion laughed in agreement, saying that if being cute were a job, Kitty would be exhausted every day. Theo added that for now, she should eat and sleep well to grow stronger and become someone great someday, because she was also a member of the Gritwolf family. They came to a large stone, and Kitty curiously asked what it was. Dion explained that it was a memorial stone, not a grave, dedicated to the fallen wolves of their clan. Theo told her that the stone was engraved with the names of the wolves killed by the leper clan because of the blue moon's influence. Kitty clasped her hands together and prayed for the departed wolves, hoping they rested in peace. As they continued on, Dion noticed a carriage entering the mansion and realized the dressmaker had arrived. Theo asked Kitty if her feet hurt after walking so long in the East Garden. Noticing Kitty limping slightly, Kitty admitted that her toenail had broken and it hurt a little, but insisted she could still walk. Dion advised her to be honest about her condition. Theo, worried about her stamina, suggested she rest and prepare to try on the cute dresses. Dion then transformed into a large wolf. Kitty was startled. Theo reassured her not to be surprised and explained that as Dion's magic grew stronger, his wolf form could become even larger, which was useful for both combat and quick movement. Theo added that their father's magic was even stronger, allowing him to transform into an even more massive wolf. Kitty wondered if she could become that big too if she studied hard. Dion quickly carried them back to the mansion in his wolf form. Rena greeted the dressmakers and instructed them to prepare the clothes, mentioning that members of the Gritwolf family might arrive during the preparations. The designers agreed to start working before they arrived. Rena told Kitty she was glad to see her having fun and mentioned that it would have been nice if Karis were there, as she had a better understanding of men's attire. Kitty asked Rena if she wanted to go together, and Rena agreed to accompany her, but said she wouldn't be able to acquire many expensive jewels. On the way, Kitty saw Mr. Elliot and greeted him, asking if he was busy and if Sir Jackal was busy too. Elliot replied that he was on his way to see Mr. Jackal and wondered why Kitty was asking. Kitty hesitated before telling Elliot that she was going for a dress fitting and that it would be nice if Mr. Jackal could come, because he looked cool. Elliot chuckled, saying that Mr. Jackal would look stylish even in a sack, and promised to relay Kitty's compliment to him. Kitty happily thanked him. Kitty arrived at the designer's workshop, captivated by the surroundings. The female designer greeted her warmly, introducing herself and her husband as Mr. and Mrs. Welra, the designers. She expressed how honored they were to be creating clothing for the Kara Gritwolf family. Rena quickly explained that there had been a slight misunderstanding. They weren't preparing clothes for Mrs. Gritwolf. Kitty realized the mistake, thinking it was probably because she was so small she hadn't been noticed properly. Mrs. Welra asked Rena if Mrs. Gritwolf was coming for a fitting today, prompting Rena to have Kitty introduce herself. Kitty confidently curtsied to the Welras, introducing herself as Kitty, a wolf cub adopted by the Gritwolf family, until she reached adulthood. An awkward silence hung in the air. Kitty felt a little nervous and uneasy because of the silence. Mrs. Welra finally smiled, complimenting Kitty on her eloquent and poised introduction, and assured her they would tailor the clothes specifically for her. Mr. Welra echoed his wife, saying it was their honor to serve Miss Gritwolf. Mrs. Welra asked if she could address Kitty as Miss, and Kitty happily agreed. Mrs. Welra whispered to her husband, surprised that Kitty could speak, and remarked that she looked like a doll. Kitty, seeing the many clothing designs, exclaimed excitedly about how lovely the clothes were. Rena pointed to the clothes and explained to Kitty that they were actually doll clothes made by the Welras using real gemstones and expensive fabrics, but the wealthy weren't interested in buying them. Kitty wondered, perplexed, if she could hold a doll wearing the clothes, since the doll would be about her size. Rena clarified that the Welras were making these clothes specifically for Kitty. Mrs. Welra asked Kitty if she had any preferred styles, suggesting that trousers were currently fashionable for ladies. Kitty considered it, thinking that trousers were indeed comfortable and practical, but worried about her tail being visible. Kitty ultimately expressed her preference for a dress with lots of frills. Mrs. Welra then asked if she had a favorite color. Kitty replied that she liked the color of a ripe peach. Mrs. Welra offered to show her the fabrics they had prepared. Kitty touched a piece of velvet, finding it very soft. Mrs. Welra complimented Kitty on her soft hands. Mrs. Welra suggested that Kitty would look adorable in white lace gloves or red fur gloves. Meanwhile, Theo and Dion complained about being made to study while their father was enjoying Kitty's fashion show, clinging to Jackal. Jackal jokingly told them to get married if they were unhappy. Kitty was looking forward to seeing Mr. Elliot and Jackal, but Mrs. Welra, the designer, was a little displeased that Kitty didn't want to try on the gloves. As Kitty was enjoying trying on clothes, a woman approached and asked if she was interested in accessories. The woman's smile reminded Kitty of Jirian, bringing a pang of nostalgia. The woman presented a beautiful hat. The woman explained that the hat was originally intended for an adult, but could be altered to fit Kitty, and it came with a decorative brooch. After trying on the hat, Kitty was very pleased with how she looked in the mirror. The woman explained that the brooch on the hat was a high-quality pink peridot, and therefore quite expensive. Kitty was startled by the number of zeros on the price tag. The woman suggested that since Kitty was a member of the Gritwolf family, Mrs. Gray would surely agree to buy it. Kitty hesitated about asking Mrs. Gray. The woman urged Kitty to buy the brooch, emphasizing that the large pink peridot suited the Gritwolf family status, and suggested adding gray feathers for an even more distinguished look. Kitty, however, suspected that the woman might have realized she wasn't actually a wolf and was deliberately provoking her into buying the brooch. The woman offered to remove 1 zero, saying the price was too high for Kitty to afford. Kitty confidently thanked her for the compliment, but insisted on removing 3 more zeros. Kitty pointed out that the brooch wasn't a real peridot, but colored glass, exposing the woman's lie. Kitty's cleverness left the woman speechless. Angry at the woman's deception, Kitty tossed the hat aside, her mind flashing back to her time with Jirian. She remembered being involved in trades where exquisite fake gems were exchanged for real jewels, and being responsible for appraising their authenticity. Kitty realized that her ability to distinguish real gems from fakes was probably why Jirian trusted her. Thinking of this, she became angry at her own naivete. Remembering her loving mother, Kitty wondered what the woman planned to do with the money she'd cheated people out of. Rena, noticing Kitty's unease, asked with concern if she was feeling unwell. Kitty quickly denied it, saying she was fine, and asked if she could try on the dress now. Mrs. Welra, who had been waiting, agreed, telling Kitty the dress was ready. Kitty excitedly tried on various dresses, showing herself off to everyone around. Her presence amazed them all, captivated by how well the dresses suited her and by her beauty. Each change into a new dress brought fresh gasps of admiration at her adorable appearance. Elliot mentioned that the knights had been praising her cuteness for days, while Jackal lamented that his wife couldn't witness this scene. Theo and Dion excitedly called her little soft paws, showering her with compliments. Kitty admired herself in the mirror, pleased and satisfied to find the clothes not only beautiful, but also comfortable. Mrs. Welra shared that one of the frilly dresses was inspired by a large pumpkin, which everyone found amusing. Kitty continued to change into different outfits, each one bringing smiles to the faces of those around her. When she put on a pink dress, everyone agreed she looked even more adorable. Kitty hesitated, unsure if it suited her. Jackal gently asked how it felt. Kitty happily replied that it was both beautiful and comfortable, especially loving the matching hair clips and shoes. She confidently expressed her satisfaction with the outfit. After trying on numerous dresses, Kitty selected her favorite and suggested choosing styles to purchase. Jackal and his sons, Theo and Dion, went a step further, with Dion mentioning that Jackal had ordered 5 of the same dress. Mrs. Welra happily confirmed this, stating she would make 5 of Kitty's favorite dress. Jackal agreed, adding that it was his wife's wish. Mrs. Welra began calculating the total cost of the dresses. Seeing the amount, Kitty was startled by the long string of zeros. Jackal calmly remarked that it far exceeded their original budget, making Kitty nervous, worried she might bankrupt the Gritwolf family. Mrs. Welra, sensing Jackal's intent, asked for his confirmation. Jackal stated they would also buy the remaining accessories. Kitty was puzzled by the word remaining. Jackal then inquired if the displayed accessories were all genuine. Mrs. Welra confirmed they were, unlike the foreign trinkets sold by the previous woman. Noticing Kitty's fondness for the jewelry, Jackal declared they would stop their shopping there for the day. Jackal, Kitty, Theo, Dion, and Elliot left through the hallway. Kitty thanked everyone for their company. Jackal casually asked if it was time for dinner. Kitty replied that she had already eaten plenty of strawberries and cucumbers. She then asked Jackal if he had eaten. He vaguely replied that he had eaten a little and was now returning to his office. Theo and Dion whispered to Kitty that their father, Jackal, would be in his office all day and that they had seen someone bring in something little soft paws Kitty would like. Curious and excited, Kitty ran to ask Jackal if she could visit his office. Jackal agreed, gently picking her up to leave. Jackal instructed Elliot to put the Blue Moon forgery case report on hold. Elliot nodded, wishing him and Kitty a pleasant time. Arriving at the office, Kitty noticed the atmosphere was different from her last visit. She saw a baby cradle and asked if it was the one his sons had used. Jackal confirmed it and offered her some snacks, but Kitty said she was full and more interested in asking him many questions. Jackal remarked on how light she still was. Kitty jokingly replied that since she hadn't tried on all the clothes they bought, she wouldn't grow up just yet. Jackal smiled slightly. Jackal asked Kitty to have her height measured before asking her questions. Kitty noticed height markings on a pillar, realizing his sons frequented the office. She insisted she wasn't that thin and offered to take off her shoes. Jackal began to measure her height, while Kitty straightened her back and puffed out her chest, trying to appear taller. Jackal playfully warned her not to stand on tiptoe or hold her breath, saying it wouldn't work once her height was marked. Kitty was shocked to see how short she was. Jackal casually mentioned that she was about the same height as Theo and Dion when they were 4, leaving Kitty a little disheartened. Later, Kitty noticed a box, recalling what Elliot had said earlier. It was the imitation from the Blue Moon forgery set. Jackal noticed Kitty staring at the mysterious box. He explained he couldn't show it to her because it contained a cursed gem. Kitty felt a little embarrassed for staring, wondering if the gem could be dangerous to others. Jackal explained it was an imitation gem, made with a small amount of magic extracted from the real blue moon gem. He gently draped a blanket over Kitty, saying that if the gem didn't affect her, it might be because she was a special child, though it was just a guess. Kitty remembered her deceased mother also believed she had special powers. Jackal mentioned her father's name, Icarus. Kitty confirmed it, adding that it was also her brother's name. Finally, Jackal warned her not to talk about her special abilities to others casually, as it could be dangerous. Kitty thought to herself that she wasn't quite sure what her special abilities were. Jackal told her that whether she understood them or not, people always yearn for special things, and if they can't have them, they want to destroy them. Therefore, she must never reveal her abilities to anyone outside the Gritwolf family. Kitty hesitantly asked Jackal if he knew anything about her father. He admitted that he didn't know much, which made Kitty sad, and she couldn't help but cry, asking him if he could tell her more about her father. Jackal gently wiped away her tears and comforted her, saying he would tell her more when she was older, as she was still too young now. Kitty gradually calmed down and nodded, saying she trusted Jackal. Seeing how much Kitty wanted to know, Jackal decided to reveal a little. He asked Kitty if she had ever heard the ballad about the goddess. Kitty recalled the lullaby about the cat pulling the carriage. Jackal explained that the blue gem mentioned in the song was called Blue Moon, a gem that could awaken the animal instincts in humans and drive them mad. Kitty was frightened, realizing that an imitation of the dangerous gem was nearby. But Jackal reassured her that it was safely sealed in a special box that blocked magic, so she didn't need to be afraid. Seeing her relax, Jackal added that further investigation was needed. As far as he knew, a wealthy merchant named Icaris had once studied the blue moon. Kitty was surprised to hear that her father, Icaris, had studied the legendary gem. Although her mother and brother had told her they were heroes, this was the first time she learned of her father's deeper involvement. Kitty, curious and determined, told herself that she needed to become smarter and grow up so she could learn more about her father. She began to read with resolve, but she soon felt tired and yawned. At the same time, she admired Jackal's ability to focus on his work for hours without interruption. She admired his focus and hoped that one day she would see Mrs. Welra working like that too. Suddenly, Kitty noticed Jackal looking at her. This surprised her, and she wondered why he was looking at her that way. Kitty's cat ears suddenly popped out. She quickly tried to hide her ears, feeling embarrassed. Jackal gently said he wanted to take a bite of her ears, which startled Kitty, and she nervously asked him if he was serious. Jackal explained that in the Gritwolf family, saying "I want to take a bite" was just a way of expressing fondness. Kitty was still a little nervous, thinking that the wolf's way of expressing affection was quite intense. But she remembered Jackal saying she was as cute as a wolf cub, and she wanted to be praised like a wolf, so she gathered her courage, shyly showing her cat ears to Jackal, saying it was okay if he only took one bite. She closed her eyes tightly, waiting fearfully, but Jackal didn't bite her. Instead, he smiled gently, finding her incredibly cute. Kitty woke up to find she had overslept. It was already dark. Lena greeted her, asking how her day was. Kitty happily said she had taken a nap in Mr. Jackal's office and received a picture book as a gift. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, and a servant handed Kitty a letter with her name on it. Curious, Kitty went to the study, where Theo and Dion were. As soon as she entered, they greeted her cheerfully, asking if she had missed them. Kitty was eager to learn, so she asked if she could study with them. Despite the mess in his room, Dion welcomed her, and Theo said he wanted to join in as well. Kitty excitedly announced that Mrs. Welra had written her a letter and mentioned her intention to practice writing letters and making invitations. Mrs. Welra wrote to Kitty, expressing her happiness that Kitty had become a part of the family. She said that mentioning Kitty in the meeting room always made her happy, and she missed her very much. Mrs. Welra was planning a simple gathering to introduce Kitty and hoped Kitty could make the invitations herself. She reassured Kitty that the invitations didn't need to be perfect, as Kitty hadn't formally begun her studies yet, so it didn't matter if her writing was crooked. Mrs. Welra encouraged Kitty to write the words "I invite you" with care, not worrying about whether the wording was sophisticated. Dion asked Kitty if she was having a party, and Kitty excitedly said that Mrs. Welra had made her some learning materials. Theo suggested starting with the basic alphabet, and Kitty immediately began trying to write, but found learning the letters difficult. She joked that it felt like there was a mouse on her tail, which surprised Dion. Dion encouraged Kitty to practice the more difficult letters. Kitty confidently said that with enough practice, she would be able to write beautifully in the future and even write long letters to her brother. Dion gave her a letter to copy, and Kitty asked what it meant. Dion said it was too difficult for him to write as well. Kitty quickly learned it and wrote, "Why is brother Dion the best?" Seeing this, Theo glared at Dion, who awkwardly looked away. Theo then suggested that the phrase "Brother Theo is the best" would be perfect for Kitty to practice her writing, causing Dion to jolt in surprise. Kitty then wrote both "Brother Dion is the best" and "Brother Theo is the best." Dion praised Kitty for her effort, saying her writing was better than he expected. He reminded her that learning to write was important because her brothers would be leaving soon for a long journey. Kitty curiously asked when they were leaving. Dion hugged her, expressing his reluctance and worry about leaving her alone. Theo explained that wolves must leave to learn how to fight when they reach a certain age, but reassured Kitty that it wouldn't be for a while yet. Kitty promised to practice her writing diligently so she could write long letters to them when they were gone. Theo suggested she stamp each letter with a soft paw print seal so no one would doubt they were from her. Dion agreed with Theo's suggestion about the seal, saying everyone would believe the letters were from Kitty. Kitty then asked what happens at parties. Dion explained that parties are social gatherings. Theo added that they would be in the greenhouse, surrounded by bright flowers, drinking tea. And since this was Kitty's introductory party, they would also have dinner and maybe even dance. Kitty was excited at the thought of dancing, imagining herself transforming into a cat. Theo and Dion suggested they practice for the party today, mentioning that snacks were already prepared in the kitchen. Kitty hesitated, worried that this meant she wouldn't have to study or train, but her brothers reassured her that they had already taken care of everything that morning and invited her to join them. They picked Kitty up and went outside together. Kitty happily enjoyed the moment, sitting with Theo and Dion in the garden greenhouse. They ate snacks while role-playing as elegant ladies at a tea party. Kitty was amazed by the treats, but Dion playfully reminded her not to stare at them too greedily, as it wasn't ladylike. Theo explained that tea parties were for conversation, and the snacks were just a compliment. Kitty understood that conversation was the most important part, so she tried to join in, mischievously asking about funny stories related to shedding and grooming. Theo, in character, criticized Dion for making fun of other ladies, making Dion realize he was also playing a lady. Kitty insisted that she shouldn't be treated like a child at the tea party and refused to let Dion touch her soft paws, prompting a humorous apology from Dion. Theo thanked Kitty for preparing such a lovely setting and complimented the invitations. Kitty proudly declared that she had written the invitations herself and sealed them with her paw print. She rubbed fragrant oil on her palms every night to make the seal perfect. She was happy her brothers liked them. During their role-playing, Dion gently reminded Kitty not to get too excited and to speak slowly while drinking tea. Kitty then started to worry about her wolf ears popping out during the real party. Dion suggested she wear a hat, but Kitty pointed out that if her ears suddenly appeared, the hat might fly off, making it even more suspicious. She also wondered if others would hide their ears too. Theo explained that wolves only reveal their ears when they are deeply moved, especially when they meet someone they want to spend their life with. Dion agreed, saying it was a symbol of strong emotion and a lifelong partner. Kitty fantasized about who might fall for her in the future. However, Theo and Dion immediately became serious, warning her that such thoughts were dangerous for wolves, especially any involvement with someone named Eden Weavies, emphasizing that he was absolutely forbidden. Kitty wondered who Eden was. At that moment, Eden was at home, suddenly feeling like someone was talking about him. Meanwhile, Kitty asked her brothers about Eden. Dion explained that Eden was a young wolf she would soon meet at the party, older than Kitty, but 2 years younger than Dion and Theo. Theo added that Eden was the only and unfortunate son of the Webby family. Kitty asked what unfortunate meant, and Dion quickly told her to forget what he said, stating it wasn't something she should worry about. The narration revealed that there were once 3 young wolf lords, Eden, Theo, and Dion. When the 2 families were still on good terms, the 3 got along well. Theo and Dion often visited Eden while he was reading, possibly annoying him. because Eden was very smart and could easily understand complex books. Dion angrily recalled Eden, saying he couldn't play with idiots. He reassured Kitty that Eden would never like her, so she didn't need to worry. Kitty thought to herself that it was mean to call someone more unfortunate than her. Dion insisted that other boys were out of the question, and Eden was the worst. Just then, Lena arrived to inform them that Mrs. Karras had arrived. Hearing this, Kitty, Theo, and Dion excitedly rushed out to greet her. The scene changed to Mrs. Karras arriving at the mansion in a carriage, with Jackal and the servants warmly welcoming her. Kitty, Theo, and Dion walked to the door together, Kitty standing behind Jackal, waiting for her turn to greet Mrs. Karras. Jackal noticed Kitty and asked what she was doing. Kitty sweetly replied that she was waiting in line for her turn because she was a well-behaved little wolf cub who knew how to cue. Jackal smiled and told her to go first. Kitty ran towards Mrs. Karras, excited and happy. She exclaimed happily that she was so glad Mrs. Karras had returned early. Mrs. Karras was also delighted to see Kitty and embraced her warmly, asking how she had been. Kitty told her that she had been practicing for parties with her brothers, and now that Mrs. Karras was back, she was even happier. Mrs. Karras jokingly said she wanted to take a bite out of Kitty, so Kitty puffed out her cheeks and presented them to her. Mrs. Karras laughed. Mrs. Karras kissed her cheek, making Kitty blush. Then Mrs. Karras told Kitty she had brought her a present. A guard brought in a large box, and Kitty excitedly imagined it filled with soft fabrics. She even fantasized about transforming into a cat and sleeping inside it. But Mrs. Karras picked her up and carried her to the box, saying the real gift was inside. Kitty looked inside and was speechless with surprise, then overjoyed. Mrs. Karras handed the gift to Kitty, saying she couldn't resist buying it when she thought of her. Kitty saw a beautiful set of colored pencils and thanked Mrs. Karras with delight, excitedly picking out her favorite colors, like peach, sky blue, and grass green. Mrs. Karras asked if she didn't like the other colors, and Kitty nervously said that actually every color was beautiful. It was just hard to choose. Mrs. Karras then told her to take the whole set, explaining that Theo and Dion already had their own. Kitty hesitated, worried that buying such expensive pencils would be a financial burden on the Wolf clan. She even imagined her family ending up on the streets. Back inside the mansion, Theo reassured Kitty that the Gritwolf family was very wealthy and she shouldn't worry about taking too much. Dion added that their family gave her gifts in the hope that she would study hard in return. Kitty breathed a sigh of relief, hugged the gift box happily, and promised to study diligently. Mrs. Karras told Kitty it was time to talk about the tutor who would help her with her studies, and that she would meet this tutor at the upcoming party. Mrs. Karras mentioned that the Webby family had a very intelligent wolf who was on good terms with the Gritwolf family and would be coming to help Kitty. She was sure Kitty would learn a lot from him. Dion immediately suspected it was Eden of the Webby family and asked Mrs. Karras if she really intended for Kitty to study with him. Mrs. Karras calmly confirmed that Eden was around Kitty's age, knowledgeable, and had a calm personality, making him a good friend. Theo was clearly displeased and started to complain, but was reminded by Mrs. Karras to be mindful of his words in front of Kitty. Theo then said that Eden only cared about himself and would surely hurt Kitty. Dion agreed, saying that Eden would probably tease Kitty just like he used to tease them. Mrs. Karras gently explained to Theo and Dion that Eden had lost his mother less than 4 years ago, killed by a leopard, and such a loss could make someone sensitive, like having thorns. Those who have experienced profound loss often push others away for fear of losing again. Dion wondered if Eden actually cherished them, and that was why he acted mean. Mrs. Karras reminded them that they all knew Eden wasn't truly a bad wolf, and as for why he acted that way, only Eden himself could answer. Theo and Dion fell silent. Kitty wondered to herself what kind of wolf Eden really was. She felt it was unfair to call someone bad without knowing them. If Eden really became her tutor, she felt she could learn a lot, but she was also a little worried. As a cat, could she handle a wolf's intelligence or keep up with his pace? She regretted not studying harder before. Dion asked Kitty what she was thinking, and Kitty replied that she wanted to start studying soon and asked her brothers to teach her. Dion happily agreed, saying he had been studying hard because he didn't want to be called a dumb wolf by Eden again. Mrs. Karras scolded Dion for using such unpleasant language in front of Kitty. Kitty thought about the words dumb and idiot, feeling like her vocabulary had increased a little. Time passed, and the day of the tea party finally arrived. Lena helped Kitty get dressed, saying that Mr. Hogwood Weavies and his son, Eden, would be attending. Lena also mentioned that Eden's mother was a brilliant strategist who died 4 years ago in a leopard attack. Kitty remembered that she had also lost her tail in that attack and felt a pang of sadness. She guessed that Eden must hate leopards after losing his mother, perhaps just like she hated Jerry and Humak. She then asked Lena to tie her hair up higher to hide her wolf ears, and Lena chuckled and agreed. Jackal and the family were waiting outside to greet the guests. A carriage arrived. A guard announced the arrival of Lord Hogwood Weavies and his son, Eden. Kitty was startled and asked Dion if they were coming to visit. She nervously wondered if it was because she was so cute that they wanted to take her away again. Dion reassured her that it was just an announcement of their arrival and not to worry. Dion and Theo took Kitty to greet the guests. Lord Hogwood Weavies, upon seeing Kitty, cheerfully recognized her as the one Mrs. Karras had mentioned. Startled by his powerful build and sharp, wolf-like gaze, Kitty nervously curtsied and introduced herself, explaining that she was a child adopted by the wolf tribe. Hogwood Weavies laughed heartily, remarking on how she resembled a cute doll, which irritated Kitty slightly. His son, Eden, scoffed, saying that if she was so easily frightened, she shouldn't claim to be among wolves. Theo and Dion glared at Eden while comforting Kitty. Observing Eden's cold gaze, Kitty felt he didn't seem to value her, increasing her nervousness. Eden then politely greeted Mrs. Karras and Jackal, remarking that it had been a while. Mrs. Karras responded calmly, saying everything was as usual, except for her recent decision to adopt. Staring at Kitty, Eden pointedly emphasized that she was only being temporarily cared for, leaving Kitty feeling saddened and excluded. She silently accepted her situation, grateful at least for being fed and protected. Eden excused himself, claiming he felt dizzy from reading in the carriage, and was escorted to a room by Elliot. Hogwood Weavies apologized to Kitty for Eden's coldness. Kitty responded kindly, suggesting they assume Eden was simply carsick. Hogwood Weavies, appreciating her attitude, praised her bravery and introduced himself. As they shook hands, he paused, surprised by the softness of her hand. This pleased Kitty, believing he also liked her soft hands. Jackal mentioned Kitty's nickname, Soft Paws, and Hogwood Weavies chuckled, agreeing it suited her. He then reminisced about a time when Eden's mother was still alive, recalling how Eden had been a gentle and kind child, getting along well with Theo and Dion. But since his mother's death, Eden had gradually closed himself off, becoming distant. Hogwood Weavies confessed that although he tried to connect with Eden, his frequent absences during Eden's youth might have been insufficient, making it difficult for Eden to rely on him now. Hearing this, Kitty felt a deep sympathy for Eden. She realized he had lost his mother even earlier than she had, perhaps explaining his aloofness. She also wondered if Eden had come here because of her. Hogwood Weavies confirmed that Eden had indeed become more reclusive, but assured her that Eden hadn't come solely because of her. He had personally requested Eden's presence. With leopards becoming active again, Hogwood Weavies anticipated a long absence from home and needed someone trustworthy to care for Kitty, which led Eden to agree to be her tutor in Grid. Kitty thought that perhaps, for Eden, becoming a Gritwolf tutor was merely a convenient opportunity, so there was no reason for him to be cold to her from the start. Mrs. Karras then informed Kitty that there was plenty of time before dinner and suggested they have afternoon tea, assigning her to oversee the children's table. Kitty excitedly agreed, determined to create a lively and pleasant atmosphere, and headed towards the tea table with enthusiasm. She nervously adjusted her hat, worried that if her cat ears were suddenly revealed in front of Eden, he would mock her again. Reaching the table, she cheerfully greeted the maids, Flora, Betty, and Anna, who were delighted by her friendly greeting. The maids were touched that Kitty remembered their names. They excitedly announced her arrival, praising her thoughtfulness and kindness. Kitty focused on creating a happy and delightful tea party. Full of energy, she asked if Theo, Dion, and Eden would also be attending, and the maids confirmed that the steward had checked and Eden would be there. Kitty figured Eden's carsickness must have subsided. She proactively offered to help with the preparations, but the maids insisted it wasn't necessary. Kitty persisted, asking to be involved. Meanwhile, Eden observed Kitty from afar, calmly contemplating her. He wondered how a cat could possibly survive in a mansion full of wolves. In his view, the weak were destined to become a burden on the strong. The scene flashed back to a young Eden crying in his father Hogwood Weavy's arms. Grieving the recent loss of his wife, Hogwood Weavy's was informed by Kale that her body, exhausted from rushing into enemy lines, couldn't be immediately laid to rest. Heartbroken, Hogwood Weavy's acknowledged that protecting Eden had been her own decision. Young Eden wept silently, devastated. Back in the present, Kitty, surprised to see Eden, asked when he had arrived. Eden coldly replied that with her abilities, she naturally wouldn't have noticed him. Kitty tried to express her happiness that he would be her tutor, but Eden flatly stated he wasn't happy about it. Kitty felt hurt, wondering if Eden disliked her. Eden's expression remained serious and devoid of emotion. He declared his lack of interest in her and accused her of being a burden to the pack. He reminded Kitty that she was only temporarily adopted until adulthood, advising her to stay quiet and avoid trouble, claiming it was the way for someone as powerless as her to survive. Kitty attempted to change his mind, insisting she wouldn't live that way. She tried to act cute, declaring that although she was weak now, with broken teeth, slurred speech, and a small body, she would definitely become strong in the future and avenge her mother. But Eden suddenly exposed her, coldly asking if she was pretending to be a wolf in Gritwolf when she was clearly a cat. Kitty was startled by his words, her body trembling. She frantically tried to convince Eden that she was a wolf, but Eden saw through her lies, asking if she thought he was a fool. Kitty became anxious, wondering how Eden knew she was actually a cat. She considered whether Eden had smelled her scent, but dismissed the idea, because if that were the case, all the wolves would have known already. She finally concluded that Eden must be a genius, able to see what even the wolf pack leader couldn't. Eden continued to press her, asking why she disguised her race to come to Gritwolf and accept temporary adoption. Kitty hesitated, then confessed that she came to avenge her mother and those little ones, the babies in her mother's arms. Eden asked what she meant by little ones. Kitty explained that if those babies had been born, they would have been adorable. Eden suggested that she return to the Cat Clan's territory and live in seclusion. But Kitty refused, saying that if she did, she would have to live like a shadow, hiding in the Meow Forest or Meow Mountain. She believed her mother wouldn't want that for her. Eden questioned how she could know what the dead wanted. Kitty placed her hand on her heart, recalling her mother holding her in her arms at night, so gently that she could hear her heartbeat. She remembered her mother saying, "If you're happy, Mom will be happy too." She expressed how remembering someone's heartbeat was as beautiful as remembering their voice. Kitty continued, saying she couldn't go back to the Cat Clan's territory and live in seclusion. She believed that if she wasn't happy, her family in heaven wouldn't be happy either. She said that Gritwolf held a funeral for her family and promised to take care of her until she grew up, so she wanted to stay and grow up here. Eden's cold gaze softened as he listened to her. Kitty noticed a change in his expression. Holding on to hope, she grabbed his hand and with an innocent, cute expression, tried to persuade him, asking if he planned to tell the Gritwolf family that she was a cat. Eden replied that he didn't plan to spread the news, relieving Kitty and giving her hope. Eden explained that his task was only to teach Kitty basic knowledge in exchange for her staying in Gritwolf. He didn't want to deal with troublesome matters. He also said that Kitty didn't seem to like him. With tears in her eyes, Kitty replied that she was just a small, weak kitten, and if Eden drove her out, she would easily be eaten by a leopard. She added that if she were eaten, Eden wouldn't be able to stay in Gritwolf either. Eden calmly asked if she was threatening him. Kitty panicked and quickly denied it. Eden smiled slightly, but Kitty couldn't believe it, wondering if she had seen it wrong. He then ignored her, sat down, and told her to get ready quickly because it was almost time for afternoon tea. Kitty was still thinking about his smile, wondering if she had imagined it. Theo and Dion arrived then, asking Kitty how her preparations were going and if Eden had been giving her a hard time. Kitty excitedly assured them that Eden had been very gentle with her. Eden gave a mocking smile. Annoyed by his reaction, Kitty thought to herself, "Don't mock the survival strategies of small, weak animals." Theo and Dion pressed Kitty, asking if Eden had been good to her and if he had threatened her. Kitty anxiously denied it, quickly explaining that Eden was just her tutor. Dion pointed out that she was answering too slowly and asked again if she had been threatened. Theo also warned Eden not to do anything to their little paw. Afternoon tea began, and they enjoyed the refreshments together. Dion asked Kitty to introduce the desserts she had prepared. Kitty proudly presented the egg tarts and cream puffs, saying they were delicious with milk. Eden teased Kitty for loving milk, and Kitty became a little nervous under the three's gaze. Theo and Dion defended Kitty, saying that she was still a little wolf and there was nothing wrong with liking milk. They also criticized Eden for embarrassing a girl. Eden retorted by asking where there was a girl here. Dion then playfully cupped Kitty's face, saying she was a proper young lady, and complimented her cute hat. Eden sarcastically remarked that she hadn't worked hard at all, just playing and eating. Jackal watched them from afar and made eye contact with Kitty. Kitty silently pleaded with him for help. Jackal walked over, patted Eden's forehead, and asked if he liked the refreshments their little wolf had prepared. Eden hesitated, and Jackal kindly said that Kitty might make mistakes, but he still hoped Eden would enjoy the gesture. Eden glared angrily at Theo and Dion, who were teasing him. Jackal then picked up Kitty and said he would take her to meet the adult wolves. Both excited and relieved, Kitty happily agreed. As they walked, she playfully stuck her tongue out at Eden, thinking he was too far away to see. However, Jackal told her that Eden could tell what she was doing just by looking at her facial muscles. Kitty nervously turned back to face forward. When they reached the adult wolves' table, Karis greeted them, and a lady asked if she was Kitty. Kitty curtsied from Jackal's lap and cheerfully introduced herself as Kitty, the wolf cub temporarily adopted by the Gritwolf family. The others discussed their plans. They decided to continue collecting and researching the leopard's fake blue moon, everyone understanding they had no other choice. Jackal and Karis exchanged glances, both thinking about Kitty. Hogwood, noticing their concern, thought about how they called Kitty their temporary adopted daughter until she came of age. Jackal mentioned to Hogwood that Eden was always talking to Kitty. Hogwood replied that it was natural to talk to someone you were interested in, that it was wolf instinct. Jackal and Karis were somewhat surprised to hear Eden was interested in Kitty. Hogwood added that Kitty was adorable, and Jackal agreed. Hogwood, Jackal, and Karis all realized the couple might not fully grasp the meaning of temporary and began to wonder if Kitty was already more than just a temporary daughter to them. Later, Jackal walked over to the children's afternoon tea table and patted Eden's head, teasing him about enjoying the snacks prepared by the little wolf. Mont Hogwood watched from afar, chuckling about how Jackal's protective father instincts had already emerged only a month after adopting Kitty. He also joked that any future suitors of Kitty's would certainly have a hard time. Jackal returned with Kitty, and Hogwood said they were finally back. Karis introduced Kitty as their adopted daughter, who would live in the Gritwolf mansion until adulthood. Hearing Karis's voice, Hogwood was reminded of when Karis was pregnant. In a flashback, Hogwood, thrilled by the news, congratulated Karis on her pregnancy. Karis smiled happily and thanked him. Back in the present, Hogwood mused that Karis must have really wanted a daughter. Kitty greeted the adults and introduced herself as Kitty, the wolf cub temporarily adopted by the Gritwolf family. The ladies were all charmed by Kitty's cuteness. They mentioned receiving Kitty's invitations, which included an adorable paw print. Kitty replied happily, pleased they like her soft little paw print. Jackal mentioned hearing that Kitty's nickname was Toft. After a pause, one lady asked how she could write such a beautiful letter with her little paw. Kitty explained that she learned from her brothers, Theo and Dion, and that Mrs. Karis would write the letters large for her to trace. The lady found this adorable and held Kitty's small hand. Another lady asked if Kitty had also drawn the little heart next to the writing, and Kitty proudly admitted she had. Watching Kitty, Hogwood thought she was incredibly cute, reflecting that the Gritwolf couple were already charming, and their adopted kitten was equally endearing. That evening, Lena asked Kitty how her day was, saying the guests had all praised her. Kitty excitedly shared that she had a wonderful time, even dancing at the ball, and that Mrs. Karis and Lord Jackal had commissioned a painter to create portraits of her and her brothers. She also remembered that Eden would be returning to the mansion to pack his belongings. Kitty realized she couldn't reveal her cat identity until the adoption period was over. The thought of having to appease Eden for that entire time exhausted her. Lena, noticing Kitty's preoccupation, asked if something was bothering her. Kitty, slightly flustered, admitted she was wondering when she would grow taller. Despite eating lots of salmon and drinking milk, she hadn't grown. She wished to be stronger, thinking that if she were bigger, Eden wouldn't dare expose her secret. Lena comforted her, carrying Kitty to bed and explaining that she would grow taller once her muscles developed and she gained weight. She also suggested Kitty try stretching exercises. Kitty, curious, was eager to learn. Then Lena transformed into a large wolf to demonstrate. Kitty was startled by Lena's transformation, but quickly became excited to try. Kitty shifted back into her cat form and joined Lena in stretching. Lena demonstrated how to stretch her front legs. Kitty followed along, but comically stretched herself like cheese, explaining that it was because she was a soft little wolf. Lena suggested Kitty raise her hips higher while stretching, and also to wag her tail. Kitty thought to herself that she wanted to become strong, not just because of Eden, but also to avenge her mother. She realized that simply growing up wasn't enough. She yearned to learn how to fight, although she felt that asking the Gritwolf family for a combat instructor the next morning might be too much. Kitty transformed into her cat form and hid in the bushes near the training grounds, secretly observing the others train, trying to learn by stealth. She thought to herself that her brothers should be receiving instruction from Sir Elliot at this time. If she quietly followed them, she could improve her skills without spending any extra money. It was killing two birds with one stone. Suddenly, everyone howled excitedly together, and Kitty couldn't help but join in. But because she was still in her cat form, her howl turned into a loud meow. Hearing this unexpected meow, everyone turned to look at her. Kitty immediately became nervous, realizing she might have been exposed, even though she had been so careful. Jackal lifted Kitty out of the bushes, saying that a fluffy cotton ball like her was too easy to spot. Kitty was surprised to be called a cotton ball. Theo and Dion teased her, asking if she had been caught trying to secretly watch their training, and affectionately called her Soft Paws. Kitty asked to be changed back into a human. Dion borrowed Jackal's coat. Theo held Kitty, and Dion helped shield her. Inside the coat, Kitty transformed back into her human form. The guards were surprised when they saw her, exclaiming how small and pale she was, and finally understood why the young lords had started training before dawn. Jackal dismissed the guards and then turned to Kitty. He asked Kitty why she was at the training grounds. Kitty hesitated, saying she was just there to watch her brothers train, but Jackal saw right through her, pointing out that she was actually learning how to howl. Kitty nervously confessed that she wanted to learn how to fight. Jackal reminded her that she was still just a little wolf cub, but Kitty insisted, saying she wanted to be prepared in advance so she could leave the mansion as soon as she came of age. Hearing this, Jackal suddenly fell silent, his expression shocked. Kitty worried that she had said something wrong, but after a moment, Jackal gently replied that she hadn't done anything wrong. Theo was surprised that Kitty was already thinking about leaving, even though she was still far from adulthood. Kitty replied that time flies. Dion teased her, saying she sounded like an old woman and didn't understand her brother's feelings. Elliot laughed, saying that only Karis had the ability to make Jackal speechless like Kitty just did. Jackal told him to shut up. Jackal turned to Kitty and asked if she really wanted to learn how to fight. Kitty firmly said yes. She wanted to protect herself. Jackal was a little worried that she was too small, but Kitty insisted that although she was small, she already had everything she needed, including sharp teeth. Kitty opened her mouth to reveal her teeth, proving she was ready to fight, and added that Theo and Dion trained every morning too. Theo and Dion supported her, telling Jackal that since Kitty was also a member of the Gritwolf family, she should receive martial arts training just like them. After hearing their reasoning, Jackal agreed. While Jackal, Elliot, Theo, and Dion discussed, Kitty watched them from afar, her heart filled with hope. Afterward, Elliot came over and asked Kitty if she could wake up early the next day. Kitty excitedly agreed and asked if she could really start martial arts training. Jackal confirmed that Elliot would teach her the basics. Kitty was so excited that she thought she would soon be able to do flying kicks and double kicks. But Jackal gently told her it would take time. Her excitement cooled slightly. The next day began. Karis, worried about whether Kitty could start martial arts training. Jackal pointed out that although Karis had doubts, she had already prepared a training gift for Kitty. Karis admitted that whenever Kitty started something new, she always wanted to support her. Jackal explained that since Kitty had chosen to learn, they shouldn't stop her. She needed to learn to protect herself. Karis recalled a disturbing incident. Someone associated with the leopards dared to sneak into the mansion, and before they could ask anything, the person bit their tongue and committed suicide, preferring death to revealing information about the leopards. In the flashback, Clyde examined a lady's hat, discovering tracking and eavesdropping magic on it. He explained that this type of magic was extremely subtle, detectable only by those extremely sensitive to magic. Jackal added that if Kitty hadn't been suspicious and bought the hat, someone would have been monitoring her life every day. Karis angrily suspected the leopards were behind it, targeting Kitty because she was now a member of the wolf family and seen as their weakness. Jackal proposed to investigate the matter further. Karis hugged Jackal, expressing her worry about Kitty starting martial arts training because cats are naturally weaker than wolves. She noticed Kitty felt more at ease when treated as a wolf, so she instructed everyone in the territory to treat Kitty as one of their own. However, Karis acknowledged that simply treating Kitty as a wolf wouldn't address the inherent strength difference between the species. Despite this, they couldn't tell Kitty they knew she was a cat, as that would make her feel guilty for lying to them. Lord Jackal expressed his concern that if Kitty discovered they knew the truth, she might leave out of guilt. Karis reassured him that when the time was right, she would personally tell Kitty that it was okay to be a cat. Just then, Kitty knocked and entered, asking Karis with a bright smile if she was looking for her. Karis was surprised to see Kitty up even earlier than Theo and Dion, praising her enthusiasm. Kitty excitedly said that today was her first martial arts lesson and that she had slept well last night. Noticing Kitty's excitement, Karis presented her with a small gift to commemorate the start of her lessons. Kitty was delighted with the gifts, especially the beautiful wooden sword and sturdy boots. She hugged Karis, thanking her for the thoughtful presents. Karis was pleased to see Kitty so happy. However, Kitty felt a little sad because she hadn't prepared a gift in return. Karis reassured her that it was all right, telling her not to worry. Unexpectedly, Kitty kissed Karis on the cheek, leaving her stunned. In a flashback, Lord Jackal embraced Karis, accepting their responsibility, saying, "Then let's live together." Karis blushed, surprised, smiling shyly. The moment, made special by Kitty's kiss, caused Karis's wolf ears to suddenly pop out. Noticing this, Lord Jackal asked if she was that happy. Karis teased that he would never understand what it felt like to be kissed by Kitty. Lord Jackal looked at her with a hint of jealousy. Just then, Kitty waved goodbye to Karis and left. In the hallway, Theo and Dion noticed her, commenting on when their father and Kitty would arrive. Kitty excitedly greeted her brothers. Theo and Dion asked if they were waiting for her. Theo noticed her new boots and necklace, and Kitty explained that Karis had given them to her as a gift for her first training session. Dion looked at Lord Jackal, teasing him that he looked jealous, playfully asking if he was jealous of Karis or Kitty. Lord Jackal denied it, but Dion and Theo continued to jokingly argue about which side to take, even betting that whoever lost wouldn't be able to touch Kitty's soft paws for a day, though Dion hesitated, saying the stakes were too high. Suddenly, Lord Jackal shifted into his large wolf form, startling Kitty. Theo and Dion remarked that Lord Jackal had never taken them to their first lesson. They had all become strong on their own. Kitty, Theo, and Dion climbed onto Lord Jackal's back, letting him carry them to the training grounds. Sir Elliot was shocked to see Lord Jackal in his wolf form, thinking the adoption was only temporary. At the training grounds, Kitty slid down from Lord Jackal's back, encouraged by him to do so. Kitty excitedly thanked Lord Jackal, saying she was both happy and a little nervous, and kissed him on the cheek. Lord Jackal, as a result, shifted back to his human form, telling her not to thank him for everything. Kitty's kiss made him very happy, his ears perking up. Sir Elliot noticed and reminded Lord Jackal that he had forgotten to lower his ears. Sir Elliot began Kitty's martial arts lesson, noticing her beautiful combat attire and asking if she already knew the at-attention stance. He commented that her posture was sharp for a beginner. Kitty happily explained that she had worked hard since she was young, and if she didn't stand up straight, the elders would lift her by the scruff of her neck. This training had helped her maintain good posture. Sir Elliot was surprised and wondered if she was the only one raised so strictly. He mused that perhaps she should have learned from someone gentler, but Kitty reassured him that she was happy to learn from him. She smiled, expressing her joy for the training. Touched by her cuteness, Sir Elliot understood why Lord Jackal was fond of her. He decided to start with an endurance test, instructing Kitty to catch the marbles as quickly as possible. Kitty excitedly agreed, looking forward to the marble catching game. To Sir Elliot's surprise, she caught all the marbles with ease. He was impressed, admitting he hadn't expected her to be so fast, especially after hearing about her nickname and soft paws. Kitty confidently stated that she was good at catching things. Sir Elliot then suggested moving on to the next test, reminding her not to swallow the marbles. In the following training, Sir Elliot instructed Kitty not to push herself too hard and to only jump as high as she comfortably could. But Kitty surprised him. With effortless grace, she leaped directly onto a tall wooden post without even a running start, showcasing her innate feline agility. Elliot was stunned, wondering how she managed it. Kitty, realizing wolves weren't known for their jumping prowess, quickly covered up, saying she simply liked high places. Elliot accepted this explanation and moved on to the next test. Their training continued until evening, at which point Elliot gave her an evaluation. While her strength was lacking, all her other abilities far exceeded expectations. He recommended she eat more salmon and meat to build up her physical strength. Kitty happily agreed. For future training, Elliot suggested that, given her physique, she would be better suited to using a bow or crossbow rather than engaging in close-quarter sword combat. Kitty was a little disappointed, remembering how she had hoped to learn swordsmanship like her brothers. She had also fantasized about having a hand-to-hand duel with Jerry, who used to scare the other cats and enjoyed throwing things. Elliot noticed her change in mood and tried to comfort her. He pointed out that her wolf ears were drooping like wilted leaves, betraying her inner feelings. Kitty, embarrassed, quickly hid her ears and apologized, thinking Elliot had heard her thoughts. To console her, Elliot explained that even the young lords had started their training with archery, and that the bow and arrow were actually symbols of the Gritwolf family. As they walked, Elliot told Kitty about an important meeting Mrs. Karras had recently attended. He said the meeting was held at the Central Martial Hall, a place that was more than just a meeting venue. It held historical and spiritual significance. It was said that the goddess had once spoken there. Kitty, surprised and curious, confirmed she had indeed heard of such meetings. Elliot continued, recounting a famous story passed down in lullabies about how the goddess had used a bow as her weapon. In the very center of the Central Martial Hall, a legendary bow was said to be stuck fast in the ground, and no one had ever been able to pull it out. This bow was believed to be the one used by the goddess, making it a sacred and symbolic treasure. For the Wolf clan, it was a holy relic. As they walked and talked, Elliot handed Kitty a bow, asking if such an interesting legend wasn't cool. Kitty happily hugged the bow, thinking that even if Elliot had made up the story to comfort her, she was happy and felt more motivated to train hard. She excitedly told him she would give it her all. Hearing this, Elliot felt proud and even unconsciously revealed his wolf ears. Kitty, noticing, pointed them out with a laugh. Kitty then recalled that she had been learning martial arts for a week. Every morning, their group would wake up early to train on the field, then go to the kitchen for snacks, and then head to Theo and Dion's room to study the golden letters. During training, she remembered that Eden was arriving that afternoon. That afternoon, Kitty excitedly greeted Elliot, addressing him as teacher, and he acknowledged that Kitty, Theo, and Dion had all arrived on time. Elliot encouraged Theo and Dion to train well, and Kitty wished them luck. Dion suggested they warm up first, and Kitty enthusiastically agreed. Just then, Clyde appeared, smiling as he knelt before Kitty, pointing out that her shoelaces were untied. He offered to tie them for her, saying he was happy to help. Kitty was surprised by his kindness, remarking that he hadn't been like this when they first met. Clyde admitted that he had teased her before because he wanted to see her cute wolf ears, and that he had learned his lesson after being bitten by her sharp wolf teeth. Kitty was touched by his words and compliments, feeling happy in her heart, and started to believe he had truly changed. Clyde continued to praise Kitty, saying she was a brave wolf and looked majestic. Kitty felt proud upon hearing the word brave, but calmly stated that she didn't like being praised just because she was a wolf. While Clyde was praising her, Kitty's foxtail accidentally slipped out, which he found even more amusing. Elliot, seeing Clyde's behavior, sternly told him to stop wagging his tail at the young lady. Clyde feigned innocence, pretending not to understand what Elliot meant, but Elliot warned him to stop acting like a clueless child, saying he could practically hear Clyde scheming. Clyde pretended to be hurt, saying he was just apologizing, and then left, wagging his tail as he went. Before leaving, he gave Kitty a sweet farewell. Elliot was clearly annoyed, muttering to himself about foxes being just as he expected. Kitty innocently asked Elliot if wolves wag their tails too. Elliot responded with exaggerated shock, saying such a misconception would deeply wound a wolf's heart, especially one who, like him, had only known pure love for 20 years. Kitty, confused, mentioned that in fairy tales, wolves held hands and wagged their tails. Elliot quickly changed the subject, suggesting they start training, and Kitty readily agreed. That afternoon, Kitty, Theo, and Dion waited outside for Eden's arrival. Several carriages loaded with luggage drove in. Theo and Dion sarcastically speculated that the carriages must be filled with books. Kitty observed everything, thinking it made sense. Eden was so smart, he really might have brought that many books. When someone loudly announced Eden Weavy's arrival, Kitty immediately recognized him and enthusiastically rushed forward to greet him, trying her best to ingratiate herself. Her main goal was to make a good impression, so he wouldn't expose her secret of being a cat. She tried to charm him with sweet words, saying how much she missed him and expressing concern for his tiring journey, hoping to soften his demeanor. However, Eden remained aloof, barely reacting to her flattery. Kitty was annoyed by his indifference, complaining inwardly, "I've tried so hard to please him, but he completely ignores my efforts." Suddenly, Eden called her name and directly asked if she was trying to flatter him to get out of class. Kitty was stunned by this question, flustered that Eden had misunderstood her intentions. She quickly denied it, saying she was perfectly ready to start class today, though clearly caught off guard by Eden seeing right through her. Kitty leaned close to Eden's ear and whispered that she was truly happy to study with him, even confessing that she had liked him since the first time they met. However, Eden still showed little emotional response, only calmly considering what to teach first. Kitty realized with some discouragement that Eden didn't seem to like it when people showed him too much affection. Eden then announced that class would start in 30 minutes and told her to get ready. Kitty immediately agreed, excitedly saying she would be prepared quickly. While waiting for Eden in the classroom, Kitty recalled his behavior. She concluded that although Eden didn't seem to appreciate her confession, he did react slightly when she said she missed him and praised his authority. No matter how indifferent he was, Kitty was determined to learn everything from him, not only to become stronger and take revenge on Jerian, but also to grow up and eventually leave Gritwolf. When Eden arrived, he saw Kitty's serious expression and teased her, saying she looked so tense she could trap a feather between her eyebrows. Kitty quickly denied any displeasure, but Eden pointed out that she was lying. Then he casually admitted that he hadn't actually been listening. Kitty was both surprised and embarrassed by his words. Eden continued, saying that, judging by her reaction, she had many complaints about the lessons. Kitty explained that she was just surprised he had arrived so early. Eden acknowledged her smooth response and pointed out that she must have already learned to read and write. When Kitty opened the book, she was startled by the dense text, thinking there was more black than white. Eden reassured her that she didn't need to understand everything at once, but since he had taken on the responsibility of teaching her, he intended to cover the basics of all subjects. Kitty asked incredulously if this level of difficulty was what he considered basic. Eden calmly confirmed. Kitty thought despairingly that it seemed her revenge would have to wait, as the lessons were too difficult. Eden changed his testing method, asking her a simple question. If she had a piece of smoked salmon and he gave her another, what would happen? Kitty tried to please him, happily replying that thanks to him, she would be even happier, and in her excitement, her cat ears popped out. Startled by her cuteness, Eden quickly turned his face to hide his reaction and then asked, if she had 2 pieces and he ate one, what would happen? Kitty paused, then blushed and sweetly replied that he must have been very hungry, and she had been hungry before too, so it was all right. She was happy to share with him. Flustered by Kitty's cuteness, Eden told her to count the patterns on the wallpaper to distract her. Kitty, thinking it was a math problem, started counting seriously, while Eden turned his head, blushing, clearly affected by her. When the lesson continued, Eden listed the subjects he would teach her: economics, world history, and so on. Kitty was intimidated by the amount, but Eden insisted it was just the basics. He added that he would teach her how to grow up like a real wolf. Kitty excitedly said her ears and tail were already very wolf-like. But Eden stared at her intently, clearly unconvinced. Realizing this, Kitty nervously sweated and turned her face away, thinking his gaze said it all. Eden looked at his watch, thinking that although he had never taught anyone before, he would be embarrassed if his student fell behind. So he made up his mind and reminded Kitty that she had said she liked him, but warned her that wolves don't express their feelings easily, so she shouldn't casually say she liked someone. Kitty nervously insisted that she really did like him, but Eden criticized her for already forgetting what he had just taught. Kitty teased him, calling a bad-tempered wolf and playfully asking what he meant earlier when he said he wanted to bite someone. Eden replied nonchalantly that people often said things like that, especially when they saw something cute. Trying to charm him, Kitty gave a sweet smile and said he could bite her anytime if he wanted. Eden blushed at Kitty's adorable display. He suddenly slammed his hand on the table and quickly left the room, wanting to hide his flushed face. Kitty called after him worriedly, but Eden excused himself, saying he'd left something behind and told her to read while she waited. Kitty thought sadly that she just wanted to be closer to Eden, but now it felt like he was becoming increasingly hostile towards her for no reason. As soon as Eden stepped out of the classroom, Theo and Dion saw him. They asked if Kitty's lesson was over and noticed Eden's red face and slightly unsteady gait. The two started teasing him, but Eden lied, saying it was from the long carriage ride, and walked away. He wanted to escape the situation quickly. Theo and Dion exchanged a worried look. They rushed into the classroom, worried about Kitty. Nervously, they asked her what she and Eden had talked about, if anything had happened like kissing, and if Eden had done anything strange. Kitty looked confused and said nothing had happened. They just talked about what Eden would teach her. Hearing this, Theo and Dion breathed a sigh of relief. They hugged Kitty and told her not to let Eden think there was anything special between them. Kitty innocently asked if becoming closer counted as special. The two boys explained that being friends was fine, but it couldn't become a kissing relationship. They also told Kitty that wolves were naturally possessive, so she should be careful. Kitty agreed, but Theo and Dion remained wary, vowing to protect her. Even though they had already warned Eden, they still didn't quite trust him. Kitty thought they were overly fixated on the kissing thing and noticed they planned to keep a close eye on her lessons from now on.